Okay, then. Wow, hi. Welcome back to the Non-Serviam podcast. I am forever Lucy Steigerwald, and here in the internet studio today, we have someone who has been nicely on the periphery of my internet experience for many years now, and they always have something good to say, and I feel like they're one of the first transhumanists I encountered on the internet, possibly. And that is Thomas J. Webb, who is a software engineer who manages open source projects and advocates for decentralized social media. Nice. They are a fellow at C4SS, also nice. And they've written articles on various subjects, particularly touching on transgender rights and youth liberation. All those things are good. We like all those things. Welcome, Thomas.
Nice to meet you. Or not nice to meet you, I already know you. Nice to be on your podcast.
Yeah, nice to meet you in a different kind of way, at least.
Yeah.
Okay, we like to start with the intros about you. Can you tell me how you currently identify politically?
I used to be really into labels and really split hairs about the specific type of anarchist or left libertarian I am, but these days I just call myself an anarchist, and if I'm talking to normies, I call myself a libertarian,
Mm,
because I think what I am is a type of libertarian. I'm not libertarian party libertarian, that kind of thing, but um, I broadly that's kind of a good succinct way of describing my beliefs to a someone who's not like obsessed with political philosophy, um, and not like a political junkie.
mm,
They get that. Broadly speaking, I don't like being told what to do, and I don't like other people being told what to do either. And I believe my body, my choice, but also your body, your choice. If I immediately, if I had to get more specific about it, I could say I'm a anarcho transhumanist. I think like bodily autonomy is a very important thing. The current like cultural war over transgender issues tries to treat like a choice over how you're embodied as like a niche concern that only affects trans people, and it's just about the rest of society bending over backwards to accommodate like a weird minority. But to me it's more like um, bodily autonomy is for everyone, uh, everyone having choice over how they are embodied, rather than being constrained by biofatalism, as I call it,
I like that.
is
Yeah.
should be seen as a universal right.
Mm,
As far as economics goes, I am very much influenced by the C4SS kind of style of left wing market anarchism, but I'm not super dogmatic about it. I don't think markets are magic by any means. It's just that, I started off as a progressive, more or less, and but also a skeptic, and I was sort of convinced by some readings that I've done that like at least some aspects of liberalism are good, like free trade. And I always kind of opposed how people on the left don't want free trade. Well, not all of them are against free trade, of course, but not even all the anti-capitalists. But that was something that was like kind of a labor position that I didn't necessarily agree with. I want everyone to have lower prices. Um, but I don't think that markets are magic, and I think which structure the economy takes is going to be dictated by like the specific circumstances anyway. um, so it's more like the state will kind of force things one way or another. They might privilege capitalists against everyone else, but if you let people kind of choose the right economic relations for themselves and not have like absolute property rights, they'll just choose the right thing for their geography. And you tend to get more market oriented situations in dense urban environments. And then you kind of have to do more central planning in more rural contexts where there's like resource constraints and stuff like that. I think it's just good to just kind of let people figure out which economic um, relations work best for them.
yeah. Can you? Well, if there's anything else to elaborate on, you said you were a progressive. Have you had a journey to where you are now? I mean, I know many
Yeah, like
people who were teenage neocons for Bush, and then became. You never know.
Yeah, like actually, the Bush era was kind of a pivotal moment for me. I guess I could talk a little bit about that. Like, so I'm an elder millennial, and I'm from a rural area, so that might describe a lot of about me, including a lot of things about me that might be annoying to people. But um, so like the 9/11 happened when I was 18,
Mm,
and I was never a Bush neocon. I I was more like an obnoxious libertarian at that point. So
okay.
I
Me
think I
too.
kind of went straight from like late teen progressive to like kind of like progressive slash libertarian.
Hmm.
It like the Bush era made me really not trust the federal government. I just saw how like Bush just came across as very like sanctimonious about things um and very paternalistic, and they kind of lied to us about their reasons for going into war and stuff like that. At the same time, I also saw how people on my side, like leftists as well as libertarians, kind of fell into like fever swamp conspiracism. Like a lot of a lot of people have amnesia about this, but there were a lot of people who believed in trutherism back then, and that also kind of bothered me.
Oh, in the 9/11 way,
Yeah,
rather?
yeah,
Oh, yeah. The more I
yeah.
read about 9/11, the more I realize that that's all bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. I like a lot of smart people believed it. It was like
Mhm.
a very mainstream thing to believe back then before we all knew better. But I just had a sense that it was probably wrong anyway. But yeah, I guess so. I guess as a teenager, I was kind of more like moderate progressive, and my main thing was like skepticism. And I'm still about skepticism, so I don't want to like push ideas that are wrong just because it's like popular in my ideological camp. And then like I saw the Bush administration as someone who's like fighting a war on terror and then also like siding with the religious right, even if Bush wasn't himself necessarily like a true believer in all of that, he definitely sided with them, and um,
Sounds
that was kind
familiar,
of a
doesn't it?
yeah. There was like there's also like the battle over like creationism
Mm,
around that time period, and but I think Bush probably knew better personally, but he probably paid lip service to the idea of, well, let's just teach kids both sides of things. So I guess I kind of went from like progressive to like wonky progressive who accepts like some aspects of market economy to like kind of going off the left deep end as I kind of witnessed how extreme some people on the right would be when they do get in power. The other reason I mentioned that I'm from a rural area is that even though I went to public school, nominally public,
mm.
the administrators were all very religious, and that's very typical. So out west, it's more like Mormons,
Okay,
but
yeah.
in other parts of the country, you get other types of religious hardliners. And there is a more recently there's like the "Don't Say Gay" bill that passed in Florida, and I wrote an article about that for C4SS. But when I was a kid, the school district I went to had a "Don't Say Gay" rule, um, and one clever teacher actually handed out pamphlets talking about censorship in schools, and she knew that they would force her to censor at the gay part, so we could see that the word gay was being whited out, and we could see the irony there. And she didn't
Okay.
note it herself. She just let us see it and then gossip about it. So that was very clever on her part. But that was kind of how I found out when I was only in ninth grade that our school district censors the concept of gay.
Hmm.
So I lived in a microcosm of a religious right sort of society and wanted to be anything but that, basically.
Did you ever dabble in Ron Paul tw-
A,
2012 slash 2008?
a little bit. Like, I never was like a full on Ron Paul fanboy, but I
Mm.
kind of had like some silly ideas like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if, Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich were friends in Congress.
Oh,
And
yeah,
wouldn't it
sure.
be cool if one of them was president and then the other was vice president? And
It
then they
would
could
not
kind
have
of
been
cancel
worse.
out, yeah, they could cancel out each other's weirdness maybe, and then we could get kind of like a broadly libertarian anti-war administration that way maybe. And I might have like went too far in defending him, even though I wasn't like super into him. But um, it kind of became apparent at one point that he's kind of weird. That he's even like from a libertarian standpoint um, a little odd because he's like, you know, he was always like against NAFTA. So even from like a right libertarian standpoint, he's not like fully on board with free trade. Um, and like he might have had some excuse like he wants a better free trade agreement, but it just seemed to me like he's just not really for free trade. um, and then I always cared a lot about social issues, so that the other pivotal moment for me in my political development other than 9/11 was Prop 8. So
Oh,
i'm
sure, yeah.
from i'm from
Hmm.
California, and that that kind of taught me that like society or the people in power don't really like gay people. And you know, in high school, I hung out with other LGBT kids, and I'm genderqueer myself. I've known from a young age that I was some kind of trans, and that made me kind of distrust institutions because even the ones who like are supposed to help you, like the physicians and the gender therapists and all that, they adopt a very paternalistic, like pro gatekeeping sort of mentality. Um, but yeah, Prop 8 was like really, it was really upsetting for me when that passed. It didn't pass with a huge margin, but it seemed like it might not have passed before the election. Like there's a real chance for it to not pass. And that was something where like the Mormon church put a lot of money into
Hmm.
promoting that. And so it's like people from Utah decided the fate of California politics.
In case we have any baby listeners, which is always possible,
Oh
Prop
yeah.
8 was did it define marriage as between a man and a woman in the state of California? It was some version of
I
that.
think so. Like, so there was another proposition earlier that prevented California. I think it was like Prop 22 or something, and that was like to prevent California from recognizing gay marriages from other states.
Which
And then,
seems challengeable in a sort of
yeah,
other
like
ways, I
it goes
bet.
against the faith and credibility because California allows you to marry your first cousin, and then a lot
Hmm.
of other states don't, and that's never really been an issue. um, but
That's also probably fine.
yeah, yeah,
That's my
probably.
spicy take.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. The law's been that way all this time, and it doesn't seem to have caused issues. So,
Mhm.
um, so yeah, there is that, and I was like vaguely against that. I wasn't like paying super close attention, in part because I kind of knew it was probably going to pass at that point. At
Mhm.
that point, like the idea that like I knew that I was in the minority for being for gay marriage. I had no illusions that that would not pass. I think leading up to Prop 8, I just had a false sense of hope that it might not pass, but it did. And leading up to that, like me and my friends actually went around town and stealing "Yes" on Prop 8 signs, and that
Nice.
was fun. And I swear it wasn't my idea, officer, but
Surely the statute of limitations is
yeah, yeah,
on.
I
I
think
would
I
hope.
can confess to that crime now.
I would hope so.
But yeah, I think the wording of the proposition defined marriages between a man and a woman. Um, and the reason why there had to be that is because in between 22 and 8, there's like a court decision in California that like temporarily legalized gay marriage.
Yep, that's the only cool thing Gavin Newsom has ever done. I
Yeah.
distinctly remember when he started. What what was he? Was he the mayor of San? I can't even
Yeah,
remember
he was
now.
the mayor of San Francisco, and he was like kind of using that to like uh raise his own image.
Sure.
Um And unfortunately, like the just a little soundbite of him saying whether you like it or not appeared in all of like the in the pro Prop 8 ads feature
Yeah.
that heavily.
I as much as that was probably caused more backlash than I just remember when that happened and thinking it was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Just in the moment.
yeah, we were all like really happy about that, and then it
Yeah.
just felt like a huge betrayal when it was put to the voters and they reversed that.
Yeah. God, we could now Prop 8 for like 20 years has kind of eventually I will find people who don't know what it is when I try to do this, I suppose. But it has been my example of democracy being overrated often because
Yeah. So
you
that's
can,
kind of what turned me in. So yeah, that's part of why I became kind of like an obnoxious libertarian in the 2000s, because I'm like, democracy isn't good just because it's a um, just because an outcome came about democratically doesn't mean that it's good. Democracy is like um, it's not an ends in and of itself. It's not that everything is good as long as it came about democratically. It's just that we hope that you know it works as a check on the power of the state, but it can sometimes make things worse.
yeah,
Um,
or just be fundamentally. I mean, I don't know. I think I see a lot of messages from people about sort of fairness in the sense of treating all government edicts the same way.
mm,
If you allowed one to happen, and it's like that's not certainly not what radicals should have any.
yeah,
That's an
yeah.
absurd idea.
Yeah, like people in like meta conversation about politics, people make up all these rules
Yeah,
that don't have any real justification for them. Like if you're against one president kind of trying to fight against Congress to do something, then you should support the same thing when it's a different thing. But it's like, maybe I care about what specific thing the president's doing.
right.
Like maybe if the president is doing something kind of anti-democratic that expands freedom, then okay, fine. Like if I think what matters more is like are people free or less free.
Yeah, I mean, it seems self-evident, but I've encountered this, and I suspect if I have the courage to ever look back at Twitter or conservative media, because I'm currently hiding in terror,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see some. Well, you did executive orders, so now we're doing them, and now tough, whatever.
Yeah.
And I prefer executive orders defending the dreamers from deportation to all the shit that's happened this week. Because
Yeah. And I also can have a relatively clear conscience about it because, like, I did criticize Obama for overusing executive orders. So I probably criticized Biden too. So it's not like I definitely at no point have I ever been like a pro executive person. And it's more that like conservatives were anti executive when Obama was president, and they've kind of like forgot that once Trump became president. Like they didn't even really
right,
just rediscover their anti-executive tendencies when Biden was president. They never sounded like Tea Party libertarians again. They
right,
just have sounded like MAGA partisans ever since Trump came onto the scene.
it's true. I could at least like just admit like the mechanism maybe matters less than the end results. Like why not just like talk about it in that way? Because they're
Yeah,
terrible mainstream Democrats, I know, but still. But like it's not that deep in that like if the king blesses you with some extra tomato crop, like you're a monarch. I mean, like I don't know, like
yeah, yeah. I think part of the issue is like a lot of the people who write op-eds. Like I know I complain about if you follow me on social media, I complain about op-ed writers like maybe too much, even though I write op-eds.
I'm sure
But
they deserve it.
I mean, yeah, like the mainstream op-ed writers, a lot of times they just don't have anything substantive to say about an issue, and that's why they try to make it all about meta conversation. And it's like, and they're not good at meta conversation either. They
Hmm.
just kind of want to make up these like, as you say, like fairness rules
Hmm.
that everyone should have to stand to. But ultimately, what they end up doing is they just end up making bad analogies
Hmm.
between things. Like, well, there's always some sort of difference. And like one example here, like when you compare like Trump to Biden, is Biden was making executive orders, but conservative Supreme Court. Now Trump's making executive orders with that conservative Supreme Court. So like right off the bat, he's more likely to be successful in getting his executive orders to be like treated like actual lawmaking.
Yeah, I mean, any libertarian who was rooting for one party having this level of dominance over the government has lost any credibility of being anti-state.
Yeah.
Maybe I should say anti-state now all the time and never anti-government, because I feel like that's been ruined as a term as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
um, well, I was going to ask you. This is a good. This is related about your post on the psychological toll of elections.
Oh, yeah. 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 So I blog sometimes, and I think I'm going to blog a lot more. As I left Facebook, and Facebook sucked up like a lot of my energy that goes
Mhm.
into writing. I just would just write rants on Facebook, and instead of like writing something that everyone can read. But more and more, I've been actually posting ideas to my blog, and yeah, that was one of the more recent ones I posted was about just psychologically, like elections, especially like presidential election, just matter too much.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be the case that like whichever party gets the plurality of the vote of people who are able and bothered to vote should get to control everything. Like that's just it's not only is that just bad governance, it's psychologically damaging for everyone. And even like the I even kind of feel for people who are just wrong about it. Like if a Republican thinks that like Kamala Harris getting elected is going to mean that straight men are going to be hunted for sport, like he's wrong. But I mean, maybe I kind of feel for him because I relate to the part about fearing for my life, you know? Uh,
That's magnanimous of you, but I actually think it is good to remember, if nothing else, I mean, the cynics are in charge, but there
yeah,
are people who have gotten all the wrong information. And maybe there's no excuse for literally thinking Kamala Harris is going to hunt you for sport. But if you think Biden's going to send the FBI, like, I don't know, but like there's some real fear. Um,
yeah,
I read a fantastic book that delved into QAnon believers really detailed, and just like the genuine fear is so it's there, and
yeah.
that should be grappled with a little more, as much as it's tempting to be like everyone is a Nazi, and that's all.
Yeah, like you are responsible for, what you believe. And I think if when people believe um obvious falsehoods, I do blame them, even if they sincerely believed it. I think it's intellectual negligence on their part
Yeah,
that led
that's a
them
good
to
term.
believe that. And that's why my earliest thing that I got into was skepticism, and I'm still into it. I still think of everything I do as at least somewhat related to like the amazing Randy fighting against Flim Flam and Snake Oil. Like I always to some degree take that mindset.
Hmm.
So I do think people, if they literally think that we're going to hunt, that there's no way to give trans people rights without hunting straight people for sport, then I do blame them for
Talk
believing
about
that.
zero sum game. My God.
Yeah, they do act like some people really do say things that sound like zero sum. Like they can't imagine trans people having more freedom without cis people having less freedom or something like that.
Hmm.
But but yeah, anyway, like people having to be horrified that the election might not go the right way means that even if the election goes like the least bad way it could go, they still had to deal with that up until that point anyway. And that's this is something that's like I take some ownership over the fact that like maybe I should have practiced more self-control and just like not let myself see the news for a while, but I can't not look at the news when the votes are being counted
Yeah.
and just worry about the outcome. And I know that I speak for a lot of other people, and it really did hurt my productivity around 2020, because it was like a really long, protracted thing, seeing like,
Hmm.
oh, who's going to win? And then like it became apparent that Biden won, but it was still like, oh, is some rogue actor in the government going to use some obscure procedure to throw the election to Trump? Like that was like a scary thought. And yeah, so there's a definite that it's a that whole thing is like a reminder why I don't like the state as such. The state creates like a fewer points of failure, so you have to care more about one thing going the wrong way. And I think the advantage of democracy over other ways of having a state is that there's more chances to iterate.
Hmm.
And anarchism just takes that further. You're having fewer points of failure, and you're more chances to like iterate on where there might be a point of failure. um, Bad actors love fewer points of failure. That's a big part of why I'm into decentralized social media.
Hmm.
All it took to turn Twitter from what it was, which was, in my opinion, was always kind of bad, but I was there since 2008 or so.
That's
Um,
very early, yeah.
yeah, because I'm a nerd, so I jump on things early, but um, at least what it was in the years leading up to Musk buying it, um, what it was able to radically change into this like another fortune
Yeah.
because of who took it over. And anytime that you have it where all it takes is like the wrong person taking it over for things to go south, it's really just a matter of time before that happens.
Yeah, with social media, there's a lot we could talk about there, and just
Yeah,
like the Musk takeover, I wasn't feeling good about it, but the panicked people were kind of correct about it. I would say it's worse than I thought it would be.
yeah. Yeah, I was kind of wrong about it. Like I was kind of more on the I didn't think it was going to make a big difference side of
Hmm.
things, because I knew how like the existing owners were,
Hmm.
and like ideologically a lot of people, a lot of these billionaires are very like kind of they have this, they call it California ideology, and people unfamiliar with that term might think that means liberalism, but it's like
If only.
more like a techie kind of center right ideology, different from conservatism, kind of technocratic, kind of libertarian in some ways. But my thing at the time was that Musk was still like that, and that Dorsey's like that, but Musk has kind of moved further afield into like full on like doing Nazi salutes and stuff like that.
Yeah, Dorsey's a real fucking. I did certain drugs and now I'm insufferable dork, but
Yeah.
comparatively speaking, he didn't go full absolutely. What the rule is, if a random stranger makes a concerning hand gesture, don't assume it's a sig heil. But if someone who constantly agrees with great replacement shit,
Yeah.
sorry, you don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore, sir.
Yeah, I mean, he responded to a tweet blaming, basically accusing Jews of anti-white racism, like with
Yeah.
agreement. So I mean, at this point, it's more like I don't even think we learned anything new about him from him sig heiling. It's just like, yeah, that's the sort of thing that guy does.
Well, just culturally, if that's going to turn into like the oppositional but the same thing as the OK symbol, where it was an innocuous symbol that
Oh yeah,
uh literally 4chan, I think there
yeah,
was a plot to gaslight by making it a symbol of
yeah.
white nationalism while making liberals look crazy for thinking that, and it worked very well. That's clever in a limited sort of way. But taking the edge off of the sig heil and making it, it's very at the very best, and it's actually much worse than this. It's like early internet where you would fucking see, or early 2000s internet where you would see memes where it was like Hitler saying, "I said something about a glass of juice, not gas the
Oh
Jews."
yeah,
Like
yeah,
this
yeah,
really lazy puns that yes, I get it. Like, I don't know.
yeah.
And Elon Musk, when he was doing the fucking Nazi puns in response to criticisms about the apparent Sig Heil, I was like, he's not even just like stuck in 2015 or 2012 internet. Like, he is actually stuck even farther back, I think.
That's a good point. I didn't really think about that, but like, yeah, he's been like an you know he's kind of a fake nerd, but he's also like, yeah, he is part of our our culture, like my programmer culture, and he was there for a long time, but then he kind of became insulated from the larger culture by just being a bajillionaire, and that's kind of made it easier for him to kind of stay behind the rest of like nerd culture and stuff.
Becoming the biggest dork in human history. Yeah, fake nerd. I've been wondering if he is a fake nerd. Like, I'm like, do you even? I don't think he even likes sci-fi. You know, I don't like
Yeah,
he.
he's made sci-fi references that make it really apparent that he didn't read or watch the thing he was talking about. And yeah, I mean, there's different kinds of nerds, but I think if you're a nerd, you don't pretend to know something you don't, right? Like
Yeah,
if you're a nerd who's not into D&D, you're like, oh yeah, I'm not into that. You don't like try to make a reference and then fail because you're trying to impress people with how much of a nerd you are.
yeah. Or you at least learn about the D&D stuff. That's not really my thing either, but many people I
Yeah.
know it is. Um, oh man, um, that could be a segue into lots of different things, but we could just rant all day, I suppose. Do you have any thoughts on how um, both radicals and all of us like could counter the psychological toll of elections and Trump and all the stuff that's happening right now?
I think in a lot of ways the best thing you could do is just do something about it.
Mm,
I mean, like just like this. I guess this is a common advice, but I think doing activism, however small, it that immediately goes from like you're waiting for something bad to happen to you're doing something about it. And when you're doing activism, you get successes and setbacks, but it's more like a constant thing. Like you're kind of
mm,
mimicking what an anarchist world is like, where it's not just it's not just like one step forward or one step back every like 2 to 4 years, but more like a constant stream of like, okay, cool, we found housing for this person, we we got the courts off this person's back, and so on and so forth. You can just try to like do what you can to help other people. I also think like when you're helping other people, especially if you're like someone who might be a target,
mm,
helping other people kind of distracts you from the fact that maybe you might also need help. So I think there's a lot that could be said about just going out there and uh, doing activism. I if maybe that's not much use for people who have been consistent about it, but if you're someone who's never gotten into it in the first place, or if it's lapsed, then now it might be a good time to kind of resume again. And I think the big thing that I'm going to try to do is write more, but focus more on like stuff for the general public.
mm.
I do try to write for the general public, even when I write for C4SS, at least to some degree, because
Me
they
too.
translate into multiple languages,
Mm,
and they at least used to have a thing where they got articles into like newspapers. Um, but I think okay, like so a lot of what the Trump administration is doing is like uh, scapegoating entire groups of people. Like when he says DEI, he doesn't mean like the specific set of corporate policies meant to inclusion. He's talking about the people who are being included.
mm,
And meeting people of different stripes doesn't isn't like a magic bullet that cures you of all sorts of bigotry, but it does help a lot. Like it's this is like one kind of mainstream idea that's boring and true, but like when people know like a gay person or a trans person or an immigrant, and um, they just realize that they're a normal person, that it makes it a lot harder for them to believe derogatory propaganda, and even if they don't necessarily like that person. So you don't have to be like a model for what you are.
mm,
Um, there's a big difference between like, oh, I know one trans person and she's a jerk versus I never met a trans person before, but I learned from the internet that they're all predatory
right.
predators who prey on children and crazy people who think that they have uteri that they don't really have, and um, it's harder to believe crap like that when you actually see their reality. And people will try to like hold on to their beliefs. They'll like compartmentalize but it takes more energy to protect those beliefs the more they encounter the reality.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who are immune to all human empathy and sense,
Yeah.
but it does truly help to have to just know people, or even like speak as someone who was not ever prejudiced, knowing for example, but just knowing for example an acquaintance who is a trans man who carried a child.
Hmm.
Whenever the debates, the fairly bad faith debates about like clinical language, menstruators and people, like whenever that comes up, I do remember him, and I know, one of those rare, like minorities, a minority of a minority, but I know somebody like that is real.
Yeah.
That that is not just something some activist imagined could happen. Like I don't know. Even that makes me just have more clarity about the reality of someone like
Yeah.
that.
Like, okay, so that guy, like, he probably doesn't want to be called a pregnant woman just because he's pregnant.
Right.
And like yeah, like I totally understand why some women might hear that and like their knee jerk reaction might be like, they're calling me a person, they won't call me a woman, but you're allowed to say woman too,
No
just referring
one
to
has ever scolded me for using the word woman in my entire life. Just to
yeah.
be
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the anti-trans camp, they just straight up lie about the conversation and say like, you're not allowed to say this. You're not allowed. Now you're actually like required to have a trans partner. Otherwise, you're transphobic.
yes, it's true. That was the declaration. Yeah, some, aesthetically, some things are like, if you're talking about, say, abortion access, like maybe birthing person is the wrong vibe because you're trying to
Yeah.
prevent being a birthing person.
Right. Yeah. And
Um,
pregnant person like alliterates. So
yeah,
like,
exactly. I've been saying this.
yeah.
It's tidy. It's not that is not a big deal. You can do interchangeably, even like, but just like the occasional acknowledgement, like it's really, and and also, are you really going to call like a pregnant 12-year-old like a raped child something, like they're going to call them a woman, like
Yeah.
really?
That's
There's
actually why
something
I think.
off-putting about that as
Yeah,
well.
that's actually why I think being pedantic about that is really important because
Mhm.
I think when they insist, they're kind of using like trans people as a wedge to paint like an idealized picture of pregnancy as something that just happens to women
Mhm.
who decided to have sex, and that they ignore that. Like, no, there's a lot of girls who get pregnant from men, and you're forcing them to have birth now. So but they make it about trans people so they could see like, oh, those crazy trans activists won't let you just call a woman. And a lot of times they kind of like reverse it and make it like it's about trans women, like trans women are mad that they can't get pregnant, so you can't say pregnant women, but that's obviously it's not that, it's about trans
Yeah.
men, but they always try to like reverse that. um
Well, some of them are also genuinely confused, I think,
yeah,
along with
that's
their
true.
prejudice.
Yeah, not everything is prejudice. A lot of it is like, biology is complicated, and maybe in like terminology is complicated, and people actually do get confused sometimes.
Mhm.
um like some of that stuff I don't like. If someone thinks that like trans women retain like a unfair advantage over cis women in sports after like a year of hormones, I totally get that. That's like a normal thing to assume. That I think someone could believe that without having being motivated by transphobia.
I mean, there's like, actually, this is ContraPoints has gotten shit over the years. Like I can't speak to that from
Yeah,
trans
yeah.
people sometimes, but some of her videos I feel like were extremely illuminating to me.
Yes.
In terms of, like I don't know, like there are people I know who are not particularly prejudiced, but are certainly not like, I think at this point they have the idea of the Gen Z trans straw person who might exist, in a handful
Yeah.
of places, but there's so much more than that. And if you see like ContraPoints having sort of ambivalence, and nuance, and like sort of having those Socratic dialogues about like what it means to be trans. Or like Deirdre McCloskey, the libertarian economist, her
Oh
book
yeah.
called Crossing is fascinating. It's about transitioning in your 50s and the 90s, and she calls it gender crossing. Like if you think there's some mandate about terms, and maybe there are suggested terms, like there's so many people out there who I don't know, have a different way of talking about their experience, and to me that's illuminating, and I wish I could make other cis people read them sometimes.
Yeah, I do think that like yeah, so both of those are very interesting people. Like Natalie Wynn is like I think she's really good at delivering her message
Mm.
to general audiences. And I do think that like you know, anarchists and trans people alike are sometimes not great at talking like normal people. And
That's true.
it's like it's kind of merciful that like our foes also suck at it too. Like, that like gender crits and turfs, they also have all their own weird terms that like the general public has no idea what they're talking about.
Mhm.
But then we also like will say things that like don't make sense to like most people. But Natalie Wynn's pretty good at talking like a normal person and being like entertaining about it. And then
Mhm.
she'll even kind of like lightly make fun of like the more militant kinds of trans people in it with her cat girl character.
Right, yes,
He's
of
like a
course.
communist. Um, and in any event, it's just it's informative and like entertaining. Her videos are like super long and like just nice color schemes and stuff like that. And then Deidre McCloskey is very interesting because she's a libertarian thinker. She'll talk to anyone. She's been to like some even kind of sketchy venues, but maybe that's a good thing that she's doing it. She's.
She almost did a debate actually in my city with Michael fucking genocide against the trans Knowles.
Wow.
And she backed out.
Well, okay, yeah. I think even she knows that that's a bad idea.
Yeah, that was an
Yeah.
interesting. Like, I was prepared to go and check out the scene if she did show up and stuff, but
Yeah.
that does seem, it's like talking to Chris Rufo and being like, "Oh, education, that's all you care about, right? You're just a serious education wonk or something." Like,
Yeah.
which I say that because I see people do that too. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is one of those meta conversation things that I think that like the mainstream media gets wrong is like their idea of like reaching out to people and meeting them where they're at is to like moderate your position.
Hmm.
And I
That's
think
a good
that's the
point.
wrong approach because when you do that, what you're doing is you're cosplaying as another person who believes something that you don't really believe. Like you're pretending to believe something kind of that you think is like more palatable to that person because like in between what you believe and what they believe. But notably, like normal people on the street don't do that.
Hmm.
Like if you talk to like some guy, just some this random guy in a bar, he'll tell you whatever like out there stuff he believes.
Yeah.
Like I think Trump and Biden are brothers and they're both aliens. Like they'll
I
just
was
be
gonna say,
honest
are
and
the
tell you,
same person. That was gonna be
yeah,
my
they're
next
actually the same
one.
person. Yeah, I mean some people actually do believe that. I mean.
I
Some of the
thought I made that
QAnon
up.
people thought that Biden was actually Trump in a costume or something
Oh
like that.
no. Oh
Or
no.
something like that, or he
Yeah.
wasn't actually Biden. I don't know, but
Okay.
I think the way you meet people where they're at isn't like trying to adulterate your message, but just present it in a way that's not like self-important and like full of jargon that people
Mhm.
don't know. That I think that's the important thing. So if you're an anarchist, just make the case for anarchism. And um, I think like like on trans issues, the mainstream media kind of leaves out like the transhumanist position. They
Yeah, definitely.
they kind of hack the they deliberately, I think deliberately, but that's my conspiracy theory. I think they deliberately try to set up the Overton window where the far left is like letting trans women in women's sports, letting trans minors transition, and then the far right is like the actual far right. And so what's missing is the the actual like completely libertarian position, just bite the bullet and say it's your body, do with it as you wish.
Mm-hmm.
It should be like getting pregnant. And uh, it's this position is like, however extreme or not extreme, it's at least logical and consistent, so it's pretty easy to defend. You don't have to water it down to defend it. You just maybe might want to like sound like a normal person in terms of the terminology you use while you express it. But and it's also notable, I think, that like among trans people, the radical position is like the norm now. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I was like in the 90s and 2000s, I was like very kind of down on myself about that, thinking like I'm not a real trans person. I'm like some gross in between thing that's not allowed anywhere. And I was thinking that because like all the rhetoric, the normal rhetoric at the time was like kind of um, pro gatekeeping,
Mm-hmm.
and that was always like a debate within among trans people. But now like the radical anti-gatekeeping position has become the norm, and most people are pretty much don't see a downside of having like informed consent, for access to HRT and stuff like that. And that's basically the transhumanist way of looking at it, and it's like totally normie trans people um think that way because they know that that just makes more sense in their own personal life.
Yeah, the transhumanist position, I don't even know exactly how I got to a position. I have like some Luddite spasms on occasion, let's say.
Yeah.
And I'm not as good at security culture things. Like, I don't know. So I make up for that by being like, should I delete everything? Or like, I'm in two worlds and neither of them are helping me. But something about transhumanism and trans people and just like knowing that like one goes with the other and they go with bodily autonomy. I don't know. I don't remember. It made something click for me. I remember.
I mean,
And
same for me too. I kind of used to have a negative perception of transhumanism, in part because I think I was confusing it with singularitarianism. And
okay,
I think William Gillis has talked about this, where people kind of make a conflation between the two. And I was against singularitarianism, and I thought it was just that.
can
And
you
also, I
explain the difference? I mean, I know singularity, I know, but singularity is. I don't know
like
specifically.
I think a lot of the singularitarians just want a situation where like we create this like supercomputer and then we have it solve all of our problems, and it's basically like a robot servants are going to save humanity.
Right. Okay.
And I think I don't even think of transhumanism as being like technology as such is automatically good, just that
Right.
there shouldn't be like restrictions on your use of it. I mean, I it would be bad if like body mods were like mandatory. That would also be bad. Like
Clearly.
people should be allowed to be unmodified if they want, and that might be what most people want.
I mean, yeah. I am actually was going to ask you. And again, back to stupid Elon Musk specifically. Oh my gosh, what is it? Neuralink. If you think that literally Neuralink and Elon Musk has soured people even more against
Yeah,
transhumanism.
probably. And it sucks because that technology is probably like that kind of technology is probably going to be necessary to help people with certain conditions. And I think Musk was just jumping in on that so he could cash in on it. And uh, and ironically, like I don't, I'm for animal rights. I'm a vegan. I don't like how he's like experimenting on animals, but
Right.
um, I that if you ignore that part of it, that might be one of the better things that Musk companies have worked on. That might save more people than his rockets that keep blowing up. Um,
That's the like genuinely. I feel like I see Neuralink talked about a lot as if it's as shallow as Musk trying to take over, the internet, like as if there's no obvious, incredible
yeah,
potential there. Have
it's,
these people never like learned about locked in syndrome and been like really spooked by it? Like, do you not understand the potential there.
Yeah.
There is a
And
leftist technophobia that I get why. I mean, I wanted tech gurus to not be such trash.
yeah,
Whoops,
yeah.
they are. But tech phobia is not the solution.
Yeah, and I think it's also giving Musk too much credit because stuff
Sure.
that happens in his companies, it's not like he mandated every one of those things. It's like he's just like a rich person who buys out stuff, and then
Yeah.
he's now like it's kind of like if something good happens in America right now, giving Trump credit for it just because Trump's the president right now. Like it's just there's a lot of things that Musk presides over because he has a lot of money, and he knows that like this or that technology might become valuable in the future because he probably has an advisor telling him that stuff,
Hmm.
so he invests in it, and then now it becomes tainted by Musk.
Yeah.
And I even worry that like people are going to be like anti-electric car. I mean, there are good environmentalist reasons to be anti-cars across the board, but
Right.
like electric is definitely less bad, and people might be anti-electric just because of anti-Musk sentiment, and that's like maybe a secondary or tertiary problem that he's causing by just being a terrible
Means
person who
yeah,
presides over a lot of stuff.
who just bought a president also.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now he's basically presiding over everything. He's like the real president. Because I mean, who knows what Trump's actual mental state is? I don't even know if he's actually doing any of the things that he's supposedly doing.
I mean, he's been a fucking weirdo for a long time, so who knows
Yeah.
where he is.
And I mean, I am very sympathetic to like technophobic strands on the left. Like, I saw someone on Mastodon. That's one of the decentralized social media to any listener who doesn't know what that is. Um, I saw someone joking on there that Mastodon is full of programmers who probably wish that computers weren't invented. Like a lot of us are like, we're tech people, but we are, skeptical about a lot of the applications about technology, and um, so some of the technophobia makes a lot of sense just from a pragmatic standpoint. Like a lot of software is not designed with security in mind, so it kind of makes sense that a lot of times activists just don't really trust a lot of the communication tools, and want to like just do everything in person with the cell phones in another room. Like that's kind of
Hmm.
standard protocol. Um, and a lot of activists try to not have like a huge digital footprint. I unfortunately like the ship sailed on that for me like a long time ago, so I'm kind of stuck having a major digital footprint because I've been like
Me too.
spewing my thoughts onto the internet since my early 20s.
Yeah.
Um, some of those thoughts are very half baked, especially early on. But and I totally get like anti-car sentiment. Like a lot of people on the left are worried about like a new technology being like the next car, like the next thing that's gonna transform society, and like not in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna sling more things at the leftists I'm imagining, but sometimes I think there's some straight up ableism involved because I do
Yeah,
think primitivism, obviously you don't have to be a primitivist, is ableist. And
yeah,
a sort of casual ableism where it doesn't occur to you what Neuralink could possibly involve. And you said talking about cars, obvious downsides um, existing, but there are like we can't all walk
right,
for
yeah,
2 miles comfortably every day. Like there are
yeah.
different forms of people. So
Yeah, so it actually would probably be a bad thing if cars were uninvented, and yeah, I think there is a lot of ableism in some of the anti-technology stances. I know this is like one of those positions that gets mocked for because it just sounds absurd, but like some of the anti-AI sentiment is kind of ableist. Like AI can be a tool that gives people powers that they didn't have before, and a lot of the problems with AI are just that is just like in the implementation, and a lot of like the hype behind it, like distorting the market and
mhm.
pouring a lot of money into like speculation. But there are valid uses of it, and there are probably valid uses of it that no one has even thought of yet. And I think like people who don't have certain talents having them because of technology is like that's exactly what we want, you know.
I mean, I have the competition. Like, I've already been pushed out of the, oh, I can take photos and write things. That's the whole internet. Like,
Oh
there's
yeah, yeah,
nothing about you special. Um, I guess my argument is usually like, if you tried to write an article with AI, you didn't write it, you did something. Um,
yeah,
my I guess squirrely part is that I wouldn't want to call it the exact same thing as writing is my
yeah,
one.
yeah.
And I
It
so far the visual stuff is hideous.
yeah,
But to assume there's nothing doing, but at the same time, I'm more sympathetic to this also because we are all stuck in the beta test for AI in like 10 years or something, or maybe less, but like we'll be like, oh wow, it's so helpful. But we're all being subjected to it on every website we ever
yeah.
looked at it. And people are annoyed and maybe
That,
full of hyperbole about that sometimes.
and I think like just the aesthetics of it is that's totally a valid reason to not like something too, because like a big part of why I left Facebook was all of the AI slop.
That's
There's
what
all
I've
this like
heard.
weird like
Mm-hmm.
boomer directed art on there made using AI, and it's so hideous it like destroys my soul when I see it. And and yeah, I also hate reading things that are written by an LLM. You know, it there's
Mm-hmm.
a certain way it sounds, and it's like almost creepy how sterile it is, and um,
Yeah, it's now at the point where it masquerades better. It has an imitation of a style, but I think we might still be in a bit of an uncanny valley in terms of you're not there's something off. But I've never done a blind test to see if I could identify. Plus, people apparently like
yeah.
AI poetry better than human poetry.
Oh yeah. I mean, and
It's
you know, sometimes there are other the one thing that drives me crazy about a lot of AI hype is actually that a lot of times there's another technology that does a better job. That's what
yeah.
drives me crazy is like people immediately are like, okay, I'm going to use an LLM for this, and they don't even think about there might be a way better way, like existing technology, even like maybe another machine learning algorithm that's better at doing the thing they're trying to do, and
Hmm.
they just like out of not knowing that much or out of just the hype behind large language models they just immediately choose that, and that's just people are still stuck in this like I have a shiny new hammer, everything's a nail now kind of mentality. And like some like one of my favorite ways to use computers to make art is like randomization.
Okay.
Like musicians have always been doing that. We've been using like sequencers that have random modes for music since like the 70s at least,
Okay.
or
I did
probably
not know that.
yeah, or doing that even earlier with like serialism is like using like formulae to lay out um like different musical phrases and stuff like that.
Okay.
um or the idea of fractals, which even somehow predates computers. Like there's all sorts of cool ways to use algorithms to make art, and you know gen AI is
Fractals
just
are
that's just one thing, and people are forgetting about other cool, maybe cooler things.
yeah, that's true. People again, especially when it's talking about writing and stuff, I am more of their ilk, but I
Yeah,
still see such an extreme. This will never help anyone, and it's just
yeah.
sweeping. I don't know if you have done anything with cryptocurrency or anything, but um, I have a thousandth of a Bitcoin someone gave me,
Oh yeah.
which is just enough for me to find it funny when like it was 30 cents and is now like $90, and I forgot
Oh
about
yeah.
6 years. But I think you have a lot of leftist act because the most annoying people on earth got into crypto. That there's
Yeah.
no, if nothing else, activist purpose for it, or
I
that
also
it's
think it's just kind of bad, like a skeptic, like just from a skeptic standpoint. I think it's bad to just make a overly confident prediction, like, oh,
mhm.
this will definitely never amount to something. Because like, what if it does? Are you gonna issue a correction then, or are you going to uh, like memory hole it? That's one issue I have. Like, maybe sometimes we don't know if a technology is going to catch on or not,
Yeah,
and
we don't.
I think I see some use in crypto. I have like Zcash. That's a secure shielded one. I think that's useful for like if you need to like send money to someone and it be anonymous, actual anonymous.
Hmm.
Bitcoin doesn't really work that way by default. I think there are some ways of shielding it, but that can be like a useful thing to do. But and yeah, there's a lot of time is wasted like trying to like shoehorn crypto into places that probably don't need crypto in the industry.
Yeah.
But that might just be a broader problem with the software industry is there's just a lot of speculation that is probably dead ends. And so this might be one of those things where it's like you don't hate blah blah blah, you just hate capitalism. And
You hate
the
tech
markets,
bros, which
yeah.
I
Yeah,
didn't want
tech
to hate them,
bros.
but I do because
Yeah. I mean it's my industry, so I know that they suck. Like there's a lot of people who think like Musk or Musk before he went like even more extreme. There's so many people with that like mentality. They think they know everything, and
hmm
um, there's also like tech people very often are middle class or higher background. There's like huge blind spots. Even like tech people who mean well and are fairly progressive are
hmm
they just they often don't really think about some of the impacts that their products might have because it just didn't occur to them. Like the whole uh I remember is about 15 years ago now when Zuckerberg instituted like the real name policy, and he said like one of the most tone deaf things about it. He's like, to me, like having a different name for one context and a different name for another just shows lack of integrity. And it never occurred to him, it's like it never occurred to him that like some people have like abusive exes who are stalking them. Some people are transgender. So, some people are like literally in witness protection programs or something like that. And
if I am remembering correctly, actual Native American names got tagged as
yeah,
at that time, which is just awesome. To I
yeah,
mean,
because they very often have like a legal name that's more like Anglo or something. And then they
hmm
have like a separate, and they might go by their Native American name, which is not their legal name. And of course, Zuckerberg doesn't think about that. That's just not part of his world, you know.
yeah.
And it's like it's not just him. Even a lot of people who aren't assholes like him still have those kinds of blind spots, and that unfortunately like colors like everything the tech industry does.
I mean, I it feels to me like in a lot of ways like the old internet is I want to cite like as someone who was not doing anything super deep on the internet in like the 90s because I was a child, but like the era of the more anonymous boards and stuff. I think there's also, if nothing else, like a normie Democrat dislike of that. And I remember reading like Edward Snowden's book where he's super misty eyed about those days, and I think
Oh
Chelsea
yeah,
Manning in her book also. It's like kind of
yeah,
similar.
yeah,
And like if that internet gave us those fine citizens, it can't be all bad. But like, I mean, realistically, the internet should be full of anonymity and real names and different
yeah.
moderation policies, etc. I
Yeah,
mean,
it used to be like it used to be common wisdom, and I think this is part of what made Zuckerberg think what he did. It used to be like common wisdom that like this is probably even like an oatmeal comic or something that like an anonymity plus an audience makes you an asshole. But I think
mm,
that idea has been pretty much debunked because not all of these anonymous people are acting that way. And then secondly, anonymity is not even necessary for people to be an asshole. People are saying the most vile things on Facebook
that
with
is
their real
true.
name, with
Hmm.
a profile picture that has them with their grandchild. Like the your real name is not the disincentive that people thought it was.
That is very true. Another, Facebook has taught us so much.
Yeah. Or if you really want to see the depths of hell, next door. That's like
I've heard that that's true. I have no.
yeah,
Next door is three different Trump flags, or rather across the street. So I don't need to be
oh
on next door.
yeah, yeah. I'm fortunate that I'm not in a particularly Trumpian part of town, but like there are Trumpers like just north of me, and oh
Just the most excessive in at least several miles is right across the street.
yeah. Ugh.
Um, oh my gosh, what was about the internet? I don't know. You saying that you were moving back from Facebook to blogging? Uh, I find that what an encouraging sign, because I think we'd let the internet become a walled corporate garden.
Yeah, I think like the since I think social media is like a perfect illustration of how like you can totally like take matters into your own hands and you are like in charge of your own destiny, and yet people will still use kind of weak arguments to kind of stay on these old platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, it's like, that the owners of this company hate you, but you're staying. And like, why? Like, why can't more people just leave? And I understand that part of the issue is that the alternatives are like more complicated. And I'm trying to help by like, I actually literally just recently offered my friends to give them like free static hosting for their websites,
Mm-hmm.
to try to kind of encourage them to have their own websites. Um, so, like when I was like in my late teens, everyone had like their own GeoCities page.
Me too. Mine was so terrible. Oh man.
Yeah, oh, so was mine. There's so many animated GIFs. It locked up your computer if you try
It
to browse
was
to it.
it was so fun to make that, and it was so
Yeah,
terrible.
I when I set up my own like a Sharky instance, that's another Fediverse sort of thing.
Mm,
I put in like a bunch of like custom emoji in it, like and custom like animated gifs, and some of them are literally old animated gifs that I used on GeoCities pages back in the day.
so beautiful.
Yeah, so it's like
Um,
what is old is new again.
I was You're a big Mastodon user. Is this true? I I confess I accidentally ended up blue skying far too much in a very Twitter way.
Yeah,
Um, but Blue Sky's recent successes and Mastodon's initial blip is still, it's more encouraging than not, I think. And I don't know
yeah.
if you see a future for that as we realize what complete dirtbags all of them are. Um,
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Um,
are the normies going to do this at all? I mean, maybe not the racist grandma on Facebook, but
I'm having a hard time luring normies over to the Mastodon Fediverse world.
um,
The best I
yeah,
could do is get them to either join um, Blue Sky and like turn on the bridge so they can kind of interact with Mastodon, um, or they go into Threads and then turn on Fediverse sharing. But that's like
which
they're not really part of that world. They can't, like, when you do that on Threads, you can't follow. It's like I can follow them, but they can't follow me. And
also,
um,
it's Threads. I was genuinely disappointed in the sheer number of people I knew who just happily signed up for Threads. I
yeah,
miss Instagram. I used to use Instagram to just look at like cute international photos of someone like posing their plush stuffed animal in front of something. Like really just like the most whimsical, like not just and I loved it. I had so much fun on
yeah,
Instagram, and I don't want Mark Zuckerberg in my business.
yeah,
So just sign up for a new one that you're not already dependent on. I somehow took that personally.
yeah. That's one thing that is good about the Fediverse, though, is you get kind of a variety of different experiences. So there is
Mm.
Pixel Fed, which is kind of has like a um, old school Instagram feel to it, like pre Meta Instagram. Um,
Back when it was probably only iPhone, which is I know I didn't have it at the beginning because it was just for iPhone.
yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
And I miss how they used to. Pixel Fed doesn't have this feature either, but they used to let you put borders on things. But at some point, they took away the borders, and that was like one of my favorite
Oh
things.
no! Out of context, so unanarchist.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Just
the
take a
only borders.
slice sample of me saying I demand borders, and then get me canceled by.
Shock audio. Um, yeah, I just oh my gosh, I had something else about normies and the internet and stuff.
Oh, and I guess I
Exactly.
didn't really talk about like the technical differences. Like, I think a lot of people are assuming that Blue Sky is decentralized, or like there's kind of two extremes. People either aren't aware that it's supposed to be decentralized at all and just think of it as like a Twitter alternative.
Mhm.
And then some of them, those people even get kind of mad when they find out that's decentralized because it seems people don't like the idea of Mastodon. Like
Which
a
is,
lot of
I
people
don't get
don't
it.
like that idea of decentralization for some reason. Like
It's not as cozy. I mean, it's not, or it's not like a big, we're all in the fun room together. It's like
I think maybe
lonely.
they're worried, and this is a valid worry of like random assholes spinning up their own servers and then harassing them
Sure,
or
sure.
something like that. And that is a problem on Mastodon sometimes. Um, you have to like defederate from that server and hopefully your server knows to do that. Um, but and then the other extreme, you have people who think that it's basically like Mastodon, but it's better.
Mhm.
And the issue with that is it's not actually decentralized at this point, and it's really difficult to make a new like software or whatever that interacts with it
Okay.
and fully works with it because you have to host everything. You have to host like all of the content that's on Blue Sky. So it's like a weird. It's almost more like monolithic, but with copies.
Hmm.
So it's like a RAID one social media. Um, but
Well, I
whereas
mean,
Mastodon is more like email, like the different
mhm,
servers send the messages to each other, and so it's pretty easy to like run such a server, or relatively easy to develop a new server that works with that protocol. So you get new commercial entrants uh, like Ghost is going to be on it pretty soon. I mean, that is an open source thing, but it's a company behind it, and uh, WordPress is on it, Threads is on it. Like, not very many people are trying to implement Blue Sky's protocol, even though there's more people on it because of
mhm.
the difficulty. And so Blue Sky ends up being kind of another point of failure. If Blue Sky gets taken over by someone like Musk, it's not going to be easy to just migrate off of it.
It's true. Though I did see people, um, back during one of the great migrations from Twitter, people talking about how people probably more like our age, I'm a couple years younger than you, um, that we used to switch social media all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and like the little kid, the pipsqueaks and the Gen Z and A probably had more of a sense that this was going to be permanent. And maybe some of us, like me, got lulled into the sense, but like MySpace, Zanga, LiveJournal. I
Yeah.
mean, um,
Yeah,
there were
it
other
seems like
ones.
we got the rug pulled out from under us a lot back in the day. Because like a lot of those early companies didn't like succeed, or it was like or sometimes it would just be like you're on a forum that's run by like some angry nerd, and
Right.
then he boots you, and then you're like, okay, screw this guy, and you just spin up another forum like that. That's kind of how, in some ways, Mastodon's bringing back the old internet because you can be that way, but you can also connect the forums together.
Which is when you put it that way, it sounds so good.
Yeah, and some of the forum software actually has ActivityPub support now. So um, if someone's like running like a what's the name of that one? NodeBB or there's one other that they added recently. Confluent, something that starts with a C, also has like ActivityPub support. So we might actually like literally see some old school forums joining.
I wonder if describing it with the email comparison would make people less scared. Um, but also, there's a whole swath of people who decided the vibes were off on Mastodon.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. Like ultimately it is about the content, and people go to Mastodon and they get well actually by some random nerd. There's a lot of well actuallys there, and I
The
get
internet's
that.
full of well actuallying, though. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. I mean, um, we're reaching the point where I lose my train of thought more. Um, what was it? Oh, it's dumb, but the only good tech guru is Tom from MySpace.
Oh
Is
yeah.
this true?
Well, yeah, I mean,
There might be something
so
horrible about him. I think I don't even want to check, but just like
as
he
far
was
as I
all
know,
our
he's not
friends.
problematic. I mean, and it's like in retrospect, when I first joined Facebook, it was like I liked it at the time, because I was frustrated by how, like, on MySpace, every time you go to a site, it's like it locks your browser with all of the crap people put on their profile.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was insane. They would add so much weird
yeah,
crap.
but then
GeoCities-esque.
then I kind of realized that I missed the lack of sterility of MySpace pages. That's why I like Misky and Sharky so much. Is it kind of has a MySpace feel to it, but doesn't go overboard with letting you put like a song on your profile, but you can put all these animated gifs on your page and like put styling and stuff like that.
I I have talked to my more techie husband about this. Sometimes privacy stuff. And we were recently talking about Apple and how it's less bad because depending on the hardware, it actually makes it more. I guess I'm trying to formulate a question again about if privacy can ever become almost a consumer good. Um, if they're like Apple, last I checked, God, I mean, like they were doing encryption at the level of like, if the feds come knocking, we don't have a back door. Like we have nothing to give you if you want to sneak in. And I just feel like that level of security on a random consumer good without you having to do anything is kind of the only way I see it becoming a widespread thing, or if that's just never going to happen.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, making a lot of it is a matter of like what incentives that the different companies are under. Like, Apple suddenly cares less about privacy when they profit from it, but
yes.
um, definitely when it's like Apple versus Meta, and it's Apple stopping Meta from taking your privacy away, I side with Apple in that case.
Hmm.
Um, I think like I've seen some arguments, some like revealed preference style arguments before that um, people don't really value privacy that much because you can see how they willingly give away um, their data. But I think maybe there's some truth to the idea of revealed preference, like as an economic thing. But I think like like there's an article one time where Matt Iglesias kind of takes that idea as like a basically an argument for letting the government have more information because it's like clear that people don't value privacy that much. But
Like a transparent society thing.
like he was. I mean, okay, I don't like Iglesias, but what he's arguing for here wasn't that unreasonable. He was more just saying that the government should have data that it already has, like in the census or whatever. But
Mm.
in this process of arguing for that, he made a horrible argument about suggesting that Americans don't really value privacy. But I don't think that the fact that Americans turn over their data so readily means that we don't value privacy. It could also just mean that um, none of the companies value our privacy, and we just kind of cynically assume that they all have our data already anyway,
Hmm.
and we're just kind of lazy. It's kind of weird how there's like a convergence between like Iglesias and Brian Kaplan on this where like wherever you are is just your free will decided that, and really it could just be that you were manipulated into that by circumstances.
And
um
you were given things for your privacy. You were given
yeah,
convenience and
yeah,
entertainment and community. It's not like we got nothing, but we maybe didn't know what we were trading exactly.
yeah. Like I think because we traded it in like early on when the data wasn't that valuable,
Right,
and
right.
and
That's
it's
true.
become more and more valuable as we spend more and more time on the internet. um but yeah, I think if the incentive structure is right, it could be like someone else handles your security for you somehow. I, it's something that's like really difficult and technical. It's not something that you can really expect everyone to get right. Like I,
Right.
I try to do everything. Like I put two-factor on everything. I encrypt things, but I understand that like most people don't want to do stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like security tends to like make things less convenient, and if
We
there
should
was a
probably
way
stop
that
using
to
Chrome.
productize that and that actually worked, if the incentive structure is right, that like I think it does work out for Apple that they don't want to have certain data in the first place. They don't
Right.
have to
That's
turn
what I was.
anything over to the
Mhm,
authorities if they don't even
mhm.
have the data in the first place. And if more companies had that mindset and just tried not to collect stuff, if there's like more of a if there's more of a cost associated with handing data over, maybe that would change things. Um, and maybe we, the
Yeah.
people, need to impose that cost somehow.
We could get rid of the third party doctrine. Can could we do that?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I shouldn't use like Edward Snowden as a proxy for this entire debate,
yeah.
but actually, both of these happened in 2013, and they're both very memorable moments in political moments where I thought something might actually change for the better. And of all things, this is embarrassing now, Rand Paul filibustering against drones that one time,
Hmm.
and then Edward Snowden, both of those, I remember the hopeful feeling I had both times that like something could shift on that.
Yeah, I
So with
think. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I would say just with Snowden, every time I see people diss him, like God knows what he's doing now, but he's well and truly stuck. So like,
Yeah, like I think a lot of us had high hopes, especially back then, of like I guess you could call it like bottom unity. Like if you picture like a political compass and top, bottom is libertarian, top is authoritarian. Um, Idea of like anarcho communists and like uh, maybe like oath keeper types. I mean, at one point, oath keepers
once
did
we
seem,
thought, I know
yeah,
we
it wasn't that, but at one point, it seemed like they might actually be like anti-authoritarian,
it did,
or at
and we
least
were,
conservatives who are like really passionate about their right to collect rainwater, like some sort of
yeah,
like a left-right um,
yeah,
front against the state. That's at one point that seemed compelling, and I do still think that like ideologically sometimes we can get good ideas from like the actually sincere libertarian right, as
hmm
on the left we could get some ideas from there, like if like some of the stuff that I've written, I've taken ideas from like public choice theory
hmm
that I think actually complements and overlaps with like critical theory sorts of analyses. But like in the mainstream of American politics, though, it hasn't really panned out, at least not anytime recently. Because like one thing is like, okay, with the pandemic, there was like some superficially libertarian wording from the right, like it's
yeah,
understandable to not want government overreach even when the government's doing something that saves lives, like maybe you want them to apply a light touch when trying to stop people from transmit diseases and stuff like that. That's understandable up to a point, but
hmm
I kind of saw through it and knew that that wasn't going to become like a lasting movement for
as well
bodily
you should have,
autonomy. Like
yeah,
some of those people said, "My body, my choice." Like they are almost like trolling pro-choice people with that. And then, like as soon as Trump got elected, it's "your body, my choice." I don't know if it's the same exact people, but you know,
yeah. I mean, there's some overlap. They're not all Nick Fuentes,
yeah,
which is why I thought almost the talking. I mean, if little fucking nerds in schools are actually saying that to girls, they should get in trouble. But like,
right, yeah.
why were people shocked that Nick Fuentes said something horrible when that
Like,
happened? I
what?
was
Wait, you
like,
mean
I
that
already.
Nazi is a Nazi? Wait a minute.
hmm
And I
Um,
actually I remember defending Rand Paul during that whole thing and saying that he was doing a good thing. And I was even
which
mad at the Democrat, I think it was Ron Wyden, who was going to do that with him and kind of pulled out at the last minute.
and Ron Wyden is way better now than Ron Paul. Rand
Yeah,
Paul has been in like a decade, so that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, Rand Paul is like a total bootlicker now. Like once Trump became president, he got all in, I mean, there have been flashes here and there of him resisting Trump, but I
He
mean, I
said
think there's
something a couple months ago where I was like, "Oh, you're awake, Rand." You actually said something,
yeah,
But in general, it's been pretty bleak.
yeah. But
I
yeah,
was
I
at
mean, like maybe if there are if there are right libertarians who are like allies in the fight for freedom, maybe they're just random people out there who aren't like who haven't been like opportunistically becoming full MAGA
Yeah.
like Rand did. Um,
I used to have more hope in the sort of enlightened redneck, like the pure leave
yeah,
everyone alone guy. And I have a lot less faith in that person and how many of them there might be, but it's not
yeah,
that guy's occasionally still out there.
yeah. They exist, and I mean, it did shatter my beliefs about people like that a little bit with the last election because I could tell that Trump did well with those people here in Nevada. Like
Yeah,
here in Nevada, we do have a lot of these like I think like anti-MAGA conservatives, especially in rural areas, but I think those people voted for Trump anyway this time. I
yeah.
don't know if they are now full MAGA or if they just really didn't want Harris to win or what. It's also weird because in Nevada, like for other things, Democrats did well. So it was just a weird election here. We're a weird state, you know.
Well, that's
But
what they say about other places that actually happened. And as frustratingly incoherent as that is, it at least suggests that some people who are kind of okay with Trump will get touchy if there's
yeah,
like an insane abortion ban, say. Like the
yeah,
majority of people, as far as I understand it, are for sort of a European middle chunk of abortion rights. I know trimesters are kind of artificial, but like up to
yeah.
first and second trimester, like that kind of thing. So they don't like some of the stuff that's happened, and fortunately, they seem to like xenophobia pretty well. So
That yeah, that's yeah. I think a lot about like public opinion, you know, and I don't have to think like a politician and be like and agree with public opinion. Like I'm just gonna say what I feel, even if it's like way against public opinion. But um, there are areas where I can say like maybe the general public is more libertarian than like the elites. But
yeah,
unfortunately, immigration isn't one of those things. Seems like regular people on the street are super anti-immigrant and here in America, and it's to the degree that's kind of scary.
but they
And
have been that has been cultivated though, and has been made
yeah,
much worse. It works, you start hoeing it with horrible talk and policies, and people get worse.
yeah,
And there's still a tribalistic, like that's a human thing that we love doing.
yeah, yeah. That's true. People's opinions do shift pretty easily. There's also a lot of noise in the data because things people's opinions are like radically different depending on how you word stuff.
Sure,
And
yeah. I mean,
I'm kind of like I'm kind of really skeptical of the whole like opinion polling industry because I feel like some of the stuff they do is like borderline push pulling. Like they're kind of setting the Overton window by asking questions the way they are, and but yeah, also people have like a pro status quo bias. So once you pass a law or whatever, um, they will kind of just see that as normal and then kind of defend that. So I think like when you make the immigration restrictions more strict, people will just see that as normal and then they'll kind of defend that. And that's kind of what's scary is like whatever Trump enacts, people will just be like, okay, it's that way. And then for me personally, it's not a big deal. So I'm gonna just that's good, and I'm gonna be afraid of changing it back because then that will be a change, and maybe something bad will happen if we undo that.
I mean, I get a status quo, like I'm like a anarchist centrist. No, I don't know. Like
Yeah,
the idea of radical change to a society is frightening to me
yeah,
because like specifically things tends to be fallout and stuff, but in general it's just a big a big idea, which is why the smaller scale I should do more of the smaller scale stuff, because it's a tangible progress, a tangible good. So but I get people being freaked out. The weird thing is that in some ways Trump isn't the status quo. I mean, he hasn't
yeah,
been this week. This is the last day, second last day in January, last day in January right now. And there have been a staggering amount of absurd executive orders. And I don't know. You can complain about supposed libertarians who went MAGA all day long, but like there's like a whole contingent of people who think it can't get worse than institutional, polite, wonky evil.
Oh yeah.
And I initially thought maybe, oh, there's the naked face of politics in this fucking bloviating TV dude. And it is, but it was a lateral move. It was not, I
Yeah.
mean, if at best. So like,
Oh yeah, I guess like for a lot of our generation, like the ultimate evil was like neocons. And then like
exactly.
Trump kind of just created a whole new thing. And then it's like sometimes the neocons sound reasonable as long
Because
as you
they're,
forget like the shit that they've done.
I mean, they talk a lot better. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, Ronald Reagan bad, yes. But rhetorically, Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall goes down a lot smoother than Mexico will build the wall. Walls are good, beautiful
Yeah.
walls. I mean, how that's to me is like a true like a lost in like a translation problem. I can be scared. I can, I'm nervous about stuff. I'm not as bold of a radical as I would like to be at all. But being motivated by walls and hiding and everything's scary out there and don't help people, like, I'm plenty selfish, but I don't understand the level of effectiveness. It's so strange.
I know like I know part of that comes from just like old people watch the news so they
They sure
and
do.
however like allegedly liberal the news is and I question that on a lot of levels. It it has a pro the world is falling apart bias,
Sure
like
does. Bleeds, it
it's
leads.
yeah, so if however much crime is happening at any given time, it's always going to look like there's the maximum amount of crime if you watch the news.
Yeah.
And like crime is at like all-time lows in America. At least there's a long run trend of it going down with a peak in the 90s, and people just straight up don't normies on the street just straight up don't believe that.
They don't believe it, no
Yeah.
matter what. It went up a little with COVID, and it makes sense
Yeah.
that there's fewer public gatherings, more stuff at home. Home is where the danger. Home is where you're going to trip and die, or your loved ones will kill you. Home is, home is where the crime is. But
Yeah.
you can't use that as a cudgel. Republicans can't. There's like only the public crime, and that's how you get shoplifting is the worst thing they can possibly imagine.
Oh yeah.
Even if shoplifting isn't the ideal, but the idea that like that's worth changing anything about in terms of society. Oh, we gotta fix this. This is, I mean, oh my god.
And
Um,
I think I kind of like what you said about like incremental changes, like when people fancy themselves Burkean conservatives like in the mainstream,
mhm,
usually what it means is like not much changes at all. But I
right.
think the anarchist approach is you kind of experiment, and that actually is like in a way the real Burkean approach, because you have a you're not trying it on like a huge territory.
Yeah, that's
You have like a
true.
chance to like withdraw if that change didn't work out. And um
Maybe we can tell like thebulwark.com about this, and we'll get
yeah.
anarchist William Crystal. It'll be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I'm a conservative because no, I'm a centrist because I don't think using the proper pronouns is Maoist revolution, and I
Yeah.
don't think that every revolution is going to turn out swell. No, like
Yeah.
even if like things are dicey. So yeah, I'm a real normie sometimes. Um, before I move, there are too many things I could talk to you about. We do have a lightning round to wrap things up, but I also this is now disconnected. But how much do you think the decisions of tech companies, Biden administration, during the pandemic, how much that negatively influenced everything. Because purely practically, not opining on whether stopping misinformation about disease is good or bad, I bet that that did more harm than good in terms of making people insane and paranoid and conspiratorial. And I could be wrong, but I don't know.
Well, okay, so like of the recent changes that like are supposed to happen on Meta products, the one that I thought was actually good is the move from their fact checking to like community notes.
Okay,
Um,
that's good. Yeah.
because like community notes is, and I don't even know if that's going to have like a conservative slant to it, because even on Twitter for a while it didn't. I mean,
Mm.
now just Twitter has such a right wing slant anyway, but um, that does, that it's, I think like a lot of the Facebook, like I'm just talking about Meta like too much, but it's also the most, Facebook is like the most popular social media. And I think like people in mainstream media make it seem like Twitter was, but it's like
They
Twitter is
do
just where
because
they hang out.
yes, it's, I mean, somewhat guilty, but also that translated to conservatives pretending that the Twitter files was like the biggest story in history
Yeah.
when it was
Oh yeah.
borderline nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I think like if you think about the things that motivate people to fall for conspiracy theories, one of them is like feeling like they have access to like secret knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we could debunk the idea that it's censorship all day long, but in their mind, adding the context by the editorials, even if conservative media is contributing to that, in their mind that's censorship, and in their
Mm-hmm.
mind the secret information that they have and they need to get out is being uh, quote unquote censored by big tech. um, so yeah, it is quite possible that that encouraged people to believe things, and it's also like something can be too much and too little at the same time. A lot of times
Yeah.
people like they commit a kind of a composition fallacy and just treat anything like that like it's just a dial. Like you either have more editorializing or less editorializing,
Yeah.
and it's like uh, the Facebook thing was like very slow to respond to new misinformation, and it like probably annoyed the crap out of people the way they did it. So like most misinformation wasn't even covered by that, but there was still a perception that Facebook was trying to hide something.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not sure how they should have handled that, but there is a history of them like doing nothing and that also being bad. Like famously, Meta enabled like genocides around the world and
Yeah.
fascist takeovers, and a lot of that was just because they pretty much didn't do anything. Um, but I'm not sure what they should have done. Community notes might have helped. I think also like they're kind of like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. They might be, it might be true that they're um, adding these like sensors on things that's annoying people, saying this is misinformation. Um, but they're also like they have an algorithm that detects virality and promotes viral things.
Right.
So they're like promoting the same things that they're trying to control.
Yes,
And
that's true.
it's kind of like a lot of things that government does. It's like the government will cause a problem by creating like weird, like perverse incentives. And
Mm-hmm.
then they have to pass like another law to control for the effect of that. Um, and it might also lead to the perception because people just focus on that law. And then that makes them think that the government is biased in one direction when the government also did things that push things in the other direction. Um, and yeah, people don't trust big tech, and it's totally understandable that they don't. And like that's that's one thing. Like yes, you have a lot of people on the left who are too anti-tech as such, but then you also have like the center left people who are like they kind of saw themselves as like on the same side as like the mainstream media and big companies, and kind of like went out of their way to defend them,
Mm-hmm.
even though I think the people who own these companies have always been kind of reactionary.
I'm
And
sure that's true.
yeah, because
I
you
just,
have like that Mark Andreessen has always been part Andreessen, however you pronounce it, has always
Yeah.
been part of like Meta's board, and he's kind of a nutty guy. And Zuckerberg's, I don't know. I guess Zuckerberg was like nominally liberal before, but that doesn't mean that his site had a liberal slant to it. I don't know. You kind of get the worst of both worlds. You get the perception from conservatives that it's biased against them,
Hmm.
or really you get everyone thinks it's biased against them.
Yes.
That's what happens on social media is like
Hmm.
you're whoever you are, you interact with other people like you, so you know that you get banned and your friends get banned, so you conclude that Facebook or Twitter or whatever is biased against you, and you
Yeah.
can't imagine anyone else also thinking the same thing about themselves. But it's like everyone's getting spurious bans, and because uh, again with you could have too much and too little at the same time. You have too many bans that are like too many false positives, and you also have false negatives. You get
Hmm.
misinformation that doesn't get caught. You get things that aren't misinformation being tagged as it because sometimes people will try to correct the matter, and then the algorithm will detect it as though they're saying the thing that they're debunking.
I mean, there's like room for error. Like, it's fine that
Yeah.
there have been mistakes. Um, I guess so. Like, the reason I finally left Twitter was not just that Elon Musk was letting horrible people back on. It's
Yeah.
that he himself became horrible, and the final straw is the enormous amount of money that he gave to Trump. So, in
Yeah.
our unethical world, to me, like, for example, I didn't really understand the way people discussed Parler, um, in
Oh.
reference to January 6th in particular, and how they used Parler to like
Yeah.
plan stuff. I'm like, what if they used the phone? Like, what are you even
Yeah. Yeah.
talking about?
That's one thing. Like I think you kind of um it's easy to say things that sound really bad to a lot of people, but like, communication tools facilitate communication and people use them to say horrible things.
They sure
Like,
do.
if they don't use one communication tool, they're going to use another. And I don't think like controlling communication is like something that's realistically ever going to happen. And one of the supposed downsides of decentralized social media is Nazis can have their own server, but
I
they've
mean,
been doing that anyway.
it's
They've had their
called
own
Stormfront.
forums. Yeah,
Yeah.
Stormfront, and they do in fact have their own Mastodon servers. In fact, Gab, I don't even know if Gab still exists or not, but that was a Mastodon server, and so is Truth Social. Funnily enough, um, it's a
Gab.
Mastodon server that's not federated because they didn't want to like reinvent the wheel. And
Yeah.
there's like one creepy Nazi guy who used to be a libertarian, and I kind of knew him, and he's like kind of behind a lot of
So
that stuff.
many.
He's a reactionary who's pro decentralized social media because he sees it as a way to annoy people into like kind of he's like really into breaking the guardrails and sneaking through to get the Nazi message across. Um,
Yeah. Yay.
yeah,
You can be
but
accidentally right about something, I guess, but
yeah,
I mean, I think it's more of a there's more of a question to like kind of needling a server to take I don't know, like the right stuff, whatever the fuck the Nazi websites,
oh yeah,
to actually like to have no server take them and kind of put your finger on the scale about that. There's more to question about that than there is in any question of website moderation to me, no matter how large, even at Facebook levels. I mean, I've decided the sort of EFF type of vibe of like keep the road neutral and like the car is up to the
yeah,
driver
yeah,
type thing, and
yeah. Like
that's a doable thing, I would think.
yeah, I think like in the thing that we always say to people who get banned is like, well, um, you know that this website doesn't have they're not required by law to host your bigoted opinions. You have their free speech rights, but so does the owner of that website. but that also means that they do have the right to spin up their own server, and
Mhm.
they have a right to call each other or talk to each other in person. I know some people don't believe that hate speech should be like protected free speech, but I mean, if it's legal, I don't think that like ISPs should be like trying to regulate it. And if it did, what would happen is they would try to regulate us.
Mhm.
That's always that's kind of the game theory there, is that we can't really give uh, the government the power to regulate speech without them using it against us. Or just think, imagine making an argument like that when Trump is the president. Like, do you want Trump's government to have that power? Because they're not going to use that power to stop Nazis. They're going to use it to stop. They're going to declare that pro-Palestine people, even yes,
Are
there are
Nazis, right?
anti-Semites who criticize Israel, of course, but pro-Palestine people as such are Nazis by definition. So we're going to use the government to stop their free speech. Like, that's what's going to happen if we have hate speech laws in America. It'll turn into like a something really asinine like that.
I mean, every day when I'm ready to give up on the nice sounding Enlightenment influenced America and just become European, even though Europe's also getting worse. Like, if
Yeah,
I could move to Scandinavia, I'm not sure I wouldn't, you know? But the First Amendment is one of the handfuls of things that America could brag about. And the
yeah,
fact that people are so, not the morons who think college students are the greatest threat to the First
yeah,
Amendment they can imagine, but just like the fact of the First Amendment is not as beloved as among radicals as I think it could be. Like, it's
yeah.
not.
And the thing is, like a lot of these radicals are like overall pretty good on civil liberties. Even a lot
Mhm.
of them are increasingly more skeptical of gun control, or at least it going too far and taking guns from marginalized people. Even
Yeah.
they are oftentimes like um, don't want they don't want to be on record saying that hate speech should be legal, because it just sounds like. But
I mean,
I think there's a big difference here between like not wanting the government to do something and then like you actively um, like being a lawyer and like defending Nazis. I think that's a different thing.
it is. And I'm glad that people have pointed that out. People I've read who are kind of don't actually like the First Amendment, and they have stated it plainly. I think including a book literally called Against Free Speech, which is
Hmm.
both a terrible book and very
Yeah.
useful because it really just like this is exactly how it is. So like even Nazis marching in Stokey, Indiana, the ACLU famously taking up that case.
Yeah.
A much more reasonable argument is, should you, with limited resources and limited time upon the earth, have taken that case?
Yeah.
On the other hand, Jehovah's Witnesses may, have given us the ability to not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. A
Yeah.
member of the Revolutionary Communist Party, which are Maoist idiots,
Yeah.
is gave us the flag burning case. I feel like it's Reynolds, maybe Reynolds. I don't know. I don't remember things. Um, People with terrible beliefs, like I can cite two really like foundational ones in
Hmm.
America in the second half of the 20th century. It's like that idiots gave us. So like,
That yeah, that is true. I think like it's hard to predict like how a court case is going to unfold, but
mhm.
I mean, if there's reason to think that it could establish a new precedent, then that might be a good reason um, to defend them. Uh, I think the other thing is I just think in terms of like I want Nazis to pay their own way.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's a good way of putting
if
it.
Nazis want to have a communication platform, they have to pay for the servers and pay for the bandwidth
Hmm.
and all that. Um, and then like if they need to defend their free speech, ideally they pay for it.
Hmm.
Um, and but if somehow it happens where their free speech is threatened and it might set a new court precedent, and no one's defending them for some reason, then yeah, in that case it might make sense to defend them. Um,
And I mean, the ACLU, highly imperfect, but they have hit that more times than than anyone else, probably,
Yeah.
and picking the right people. So it's not just an edge lord waste of resources
Yeah.
situation at all.
There's a quote from H.L. Mencken that I really like. I mean, H.L. Mencken was an asshole and kind of an anti-Semite, but
True
he
story.
did he did say something that I really like. To paraphrase, like, the trouble with defending human freedom is you have to defend. You're often having to defend scoundrels because um,
It's true.
that's often where it starts.
Hmm.
Um, I think in reality, it's not that oppression starts with scoundrels, but it starts with people who are unpopular for whatever reason. They might be unpopular for valid reasons because they're freaking neo Nazis, or they're unpopular for invalid reasons because they're illegal immigrants or they're uh, gay trans people or something. Um,
Or they could be somebody with, I mean, people like to pretend that cops know someone's arrest record magically. But like there are people who are imperfect, who are extrajudicially killed
right?
by the
Yeah.
cops,
Yeah.
who have done bad things in their life. George Floyd,
Yeah.
as far as I know, did some bad things in his
Yeah.
life. That was still very bad and wrong.
Yeah, because the precedent that sets is not that cops wisely kill people who happen to do wrong things. It's that they just kill the general population, irrespective.
Yeah, um, I suspect that probably more sympathetic people are victimized than unsympathetic, but
Yeah.
my new bingo sheet, it used to be making fun of Hoppians, I had to mention, but I also have to constantly, when talking about racism, think about like Ruby Ridge, where there is a fucking great book about that. The first section of it is all about how this family has terrible beliefs.
Hmm.
Their paranoia, made this situation happen. They are racist. You could certainly argue that keeping your children in that environment is kind of abusive. And then the
Yeah.
second part is like, and look what the fucking feds did. Like,
Yeah.
there has to be an element of like, okay, you don't do that, no matter how ridiculous and racist those parents are. Like, there is a limit of like, especially when it's a family, because a
Yeah.
family can suck too, but you still shouldn't kill them. And the Branch Davidians,
Yeah. Yeah.
child,
I was gonna say that's other
he was a
good
child
example.
molester, um,
Yeah.
and so to fix that, they burned some children.
Yeah. I think
Problem
that's
solved.
kind of a good litmus test in some ways because I think if someone thinks it's okay to kill children to rescue them, then they might be okay with like killing North Koreans to rescue them or something like that.
Well, they can. You can also, anytime something terrible was done, you have to say it had to be done that way. From the
Yeah,
like someone talking about the feds. Well, it was unfortunate, but what else could they have done? And we
yeah,
had to nuke Hiroshima because like the way
right.
it was
Yeah,
done is the only way it could have been done.
yeah,
Which is very convenient for a lot of arguments and is never true. It never had to
yeah.
go the way it went.
There's almost always like a better way to handle situations like that, and um, when people are kind of defending like war crimes and stuff, it is often like they're kind of describing it so it sounds as much like the Branch Davidians as they can, and then explain why that had to happen because it's like that. Like that, I get a lot of that with Gaza. The people make it sound like that was a Branch Davidian compound, and everyone there's brainwashed Hamas supporters, and it's just not true anyway. But even if it was, I think if people are genuinely brainwashed, that's all the more reason to be sympathetic towards them and um, not want to just kill them all.
Especially the children. And you, in fact,
Yeah,
get that argument. A third of the Gazans are under 18. Well, they're all taught to hate the Jews. So, okay,
yeah.
so will killing them, will the ethnic cleansing fix that?
Yeah, I wait
I mean,
till you find out all the things that Americans are taught to hate. Is it okay to start killing us? Like,
yeah, am I going to go firebomb Pat Buchanan? I mean, no comment legally, Brandenburg versus Ohio, etc. But like, if you want to kill someone with bad ideas, there's always somebody, And
yeah,
also, you don't know those children, and there
yeah,
are variances. And one of my principles is you never get to do that. I don't
yeah,
fucking care what Hamas is. I don't. I mean, I used to over argue World War II in the sense that the motivation was not to save the victims of Hitler at all. And in fact, if that had been prioritized, a lot more of them would have survived. Um,
Yeah.
but then in the other, you can go the other way and get to, I'm not fully pacifistic, but you don't get to just bomb urban areas or kill children. That is one of my
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah,
That's
like that's kind of why in some ways I even think like with the atomic bombs, like that's almost beside the point because we are already killing like way too many civilians just with traditional bombs at that point. And that was just kind of the icing on the cake. Yeah, I know like a tactical girlfriend had kind of interesting conversations recently uh, about the Branch Davidians and Ruby Ridge. If anyone's not familiar with her, she's like a gun YouTuber, and
mhm,
um, she's also trans and Afghan American,
cool.
and
It's an interesting
she's
demographic.
pretty yeah, and her gun advice is like really practical and stuff. So she calls
Mhm.
herself tactical to like make fun of people who are like gear fetishizers,
Yeah,
basically.
everything is tactical. There's good YouTube things of people
Yeah,
making that. My
but
tactical cop.
yeah, but she kind of talked about how those things are good litmus tests, kind of in both directions. Because like on the one hand, people who try to justify those things are just like the kind of people who justify war crimes, basically. But on the other hand, a lot of people in like the militia, right
Literally Timothy
libertarian,
McVeigh.
yeah, a lot of them kind of make that out to be like the only times the government oppressed Americans, and then don't talk about the move bombing, for example.
I
And
almost I almost brought that up, including the
yeah,
fact that I learned about that 20 years after I learned about Waco and Ruby Ridge.
yeah, I mean, same. Oh, I learned about Waco when it was happening. It was like all over the news, and then uh, hearing people make Branch Davidians jokes and stuff like that. Like the way people talked about the time was pretty monstrous. Like they just made
Really?
it sound like everyone in there is crazy and they had it coming, kind of a thing, and like
Wow.
making fun
I
of them.
don't remember. I wasn't quite old enough to remember that.
Oh yeah, and it might also just be the environment I was in too. Like I'm again from a small town, maybe just a lot of conservatism there, um,
I
but
do have a memory of watching the TV miniseries about Ruby Ridge starring Randy Quaid with my
oh,
parents.
Randy Quaid was okay,
And
interesting.
Randy Quaid, who is now crazy,
Yeah,
is like
that's
very
what's interesting about it.
Randy and Randy, so many Randys, crazy
Yeah.
Randys. So I learned about that because my dad is like a normie conservative libertarian,
Oh,
but I'm sure
okay.
he was paying, attention as that news happened, and because he's not devoid of empathy, he was like, "Wow."
Yeah.
But at the same time, also, I've seen people refer to the Branch Davidians as white supremacists or separatists, and it's like how it's either a third or almost a half of them were black,
Yeah.
which no one ever discusses because the asshole leader was an asshole white guy. And if you see photos of like the kind of in charge people during the raid talking about it, it's mostly white people. It's true. There was a ton of black people
Oh,
there.
so it's kind of like I mean that's kind of like the Jonestown thing because the leader is white, but there's a lot of black people in it. Um,
And
it's
also,
kind of
people are assholes about Jonestown, and that's only now slightly shifting.
yeah. I
People
I,
say,
I
oh, a mass suicide of 900 people. Okay, well, all the children, so that's 200 people. And I would say a large percentage of the adults, I mean, that was not a freely done. They were literally
yeah
imprisoned. Yes, they should have tipped over the big vat of poison, but that was not freely done. So the very
yeah
expression drinking the Kool-Aid kind of, the more you learn
yeah.
about it, the more like,
I credit Charles Johnson, who also used to write for C4SS, for kind of explaining why I shouldn't use the phrase "drinking the Kool Aid" because it's like
nice.
it's
I always
kicking
liked
sun
him.
while we're down. It's
Hmm.
there's a lot of children and stuff, and they were like forced to do it. And drinking the Kool Aid is usually used to refer to people who are like willfully letting themselves be deceived.
People, I mean, people who are, the more you realize, Jim Jones at least pretended to have these radical
Yeah,
beliefs, including really anti-racist during that time.
Yeah.
the predatory nature of using that against those people is even more repellent, you know?
Yeah. I've weirdly seen like fascists and such kind of use that against the left, like saying that the left is like Jonestown. And it's but they do that a lot though. They always will deliberately conflate uh sincere believers of a thing with people who just predatorily pretend to believe it, hypocrites. Um
And I mean, maybe once upon a time Jones was, somewhat sincere or whatever.
yeah.
But if you read about him, I don't know. I remember he sounded like he was a bit of an egomaniac, which obviously makes
Yeah.
sense. But like Fred Phelps, the founder of the Westboro Baptist Church, worked as a civil rights attorney before he became
Oh
a
yeah.
race like the worst little church in existence.
Yeah.
People are weird. Like,
And there've been a number of like contemporary like lefty cults like in Portland and such, and there's the PSL or whatever. Like none of them are quite like Jonestown sort of bad, but definitely there are abusive cults out there that adopt like lefty verbiage.
yeah,
Um,
that tangential journey was all my fault, but I can't help it.
yeah.
And I just, as much as I feel I'm disappointed in like the people who didn't. I thought there were more people who didn't have all the ideology right, but had the right sort of instincts and leanings. And
Hmm.
I would think I was wrong, unfortunately, quite a bit about that. Like you mentioned the Oath Keepers.
Oh yeah.
Poor Radley Balko, who came out of libertarianism. I don't know what he calls himself now, but he does great criminal justice reporting. Interviewed the head of the Oath Keepers for Reason magazine once. I mentioned them not negatively for Reason once because on paper they sound like the vaguely encouraging rednecks of like, we won't enforce unconstitutional things, us in the military and cops. Like, it sounds better than not. And they
Yeah.
turned out to be awful. So, like,
Yeah.
Radley is embarrassed by that, I think. And I am a bit, but I also am like, but they sounded.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I'm
I was
gonna
hoping.
just to troll past me. I'm gonna if I ever get like a time machine, I'm gonna go back in time and tell me in the 2000s that in the future there's going to be a trans woman in the Oath Keepers, and she's going to fight. She's going to go to jail for trying to keep fascists in power.
Is there a trans one in the Oath Keepers? I
Yeah,
missed
the
that.
person who got like the third or second worst sentence. I forget her name. I don't remember the name of her name off the top of my head though. I don't. I forget all their names now. What was the
Life
guy
is a
who lit?
rich tapestry.
Yeah, let me look at. I should look it up.
And you could be more. I mean, that's going out of your way to help badness, but
Yeah,
I imagine I can understand, especially to a minority group that's smaller than, say, women like myself,
yeah.
that you think if you are one of the good ones, that you might be safer.
Yeah,
Someone like Blair White, who is a
oh,
disaster, but
yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
Jessica Watkins is her name.
Why does it sound familiar? I think it does. Maybe
Yeah,
I didn't know she was trans.
yeah. So I
Weird.
think in her case, she got paranoid because of her being trans. I think that's one thing that really sucks is like persecution kind of makes people go crazy sometimes,
Hmm.
and that's another part of the whole like importance of protecting your own mental health is you kind of have to make sure you don't like start falling for conspiracy theories and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of conspiracy theories like on the left and that even some anarchists believe in. It's important not to believe that stuff either.
I
Uh,
mean, you don't have to brush. Like, I think it is possible that the CIA had some involvement in the JFK assassination,
oh
but I
yeah,
have no. I'm not going to pretend I have any idea what actually occurred.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and with like 9/11, I don't know if there's more stuff with like Saudi money, but I read like 3 books about 9/11 last year. I had like a mini fixation, and every single conspiracy theory you have ever heard of has a crystal clear origin. Like the Flight
oh yeah,
93, one person said, and I was like, "Where's the plane?" Because a plane went 500 miles per hour almost directly into the earth. And
Oh.
physics hates us, and it went very deep. But one early responder said that, and for the rest of time,
Oh.
there would be people who think the plane was not there. Maybe it was never there. Maybe it
Oh.
landed in Ohio, which was another thing because flight whatever was one of the planes they initially thought, oh no, is it hijacked? And then,
Yeah.
oh, it landed in Ohio. Like, it's all right there. You can follow how it morphed into a conspiracy. It's
Yeah. Well, I think, with conspiracy nuts, there's always this kind of like Mott and Bailey with the if when you challenge them, they always say, "Oh, so you think that people in power are trustworthy?" So
definitely we do.
I think the real story is that people in power are doing all sorts of sketchy stuff. I just skeptical of the idea that someone knows the details of what sketchy stuff they're doing without like evidence of it, specific evidence. And oh,
I
and
mean,
I was also going to say, you mentioned the Saudi money.
mm,
I'm very paranoid about that because there's a lot of Saudi money in the tech industry. And
okay.
I always wondered if that was a kind of a thing that pushes us in a conservative direction. But I'm also
No,
like always worried that like they could like mess up the tech industry really bad because they own like so many things. And
I
um,
didn't know that. You
yeah,
make up a new conspiracy about it. Like, you can make your own, right? It's
they like buy up a lot of well, it's actually like totally makes logical sense. They don't want to be dependent on oil, so
mhm,
they want to be seen as like a high tech company. So the people, the royal family, basically, but
mhm,
especially Mohammed bin Salman, puts a lot of money into like SoftBank and I think like Uber, like a lot of these like tech startups,
mm,
because they want to own a piece of that. They want to keep making money even after the oil money starts drying up, and that makes sense. But I think it also means that like these very religiously authoritarian people um, are owners of a lot of tech that employs a lot of very like gay people, and I don't know. It
yeah.
kind of doesn't sit right with me how much Saudi money is in the tech industry.
I mean, that's fair, and money is money, and it does. I used to think Citizens United was probably correctly decided,
Yeah,
and now I get the classic libertarian classic argument about you can't restrict money because that's a speech, and like I get some of the ill effects of doing that, but like Elon Musk just bought a president, like we can't.
yeah,
It's like prioritizing Donald Trump's free speech rights above all others. Like, it's the opposite. Like, all people are not equal. The powerful, we shouldn't put down the red carpet. Oh, the worst civil liberties violation I can imagine is Donald Trump not being allowed to run for president. Like, there is a very rigid
yeah.
interpretation of principle that is just the opposite of helpful.
Yeah, a lot of so much of the discourse for like Trump supporters is like superficially libertarian, like,
I
oh, this
know.
poor guy is being persecuted by the deep state, and
The
you know,
FBI, or bad.
yeah.
I mean,
I think the bottom line with a lot of that is just it's probably dangerous for anyone to have too much money just because the power that it buys.
yeah.
I'm not even thinking in terms of like fairness. Like it's not fair that I don't have more money if that other person has more than I do. I just think more in terms of like what power differential is created by that. So
Hmm.
like the same thing that makes me like not trust the state makes me not trust people with too much money because they're also single points of failure. All you have to do to do a lot of damage is just indoctrinate someone like Elon Musk into
Yep.
Nazism. Because even if he was always bad, maybe he wasn't a Nazi before, you know?
I feel like he wasn't, and I'm always a little uncomfortable when I see people being like, "Look, his grandfather was a Nazi sympathizer," or "He was
Yeah.
5 years old in like apartheid South Africa." I'm like, "What the hell does that? He didn't do that."
Yeah,
I
I
critique all the shit he does do. It's very
like
like
they're kind of almost buying into like a Nazi race science view of things that like it's a
it's
evil
fine.
as a genealogical thing.
I'm
Um,
like, that's not.
and yeah, I don't really blame someone for coming from apartheid South Africa. Like, I don't, believe in like original sin of like where you're born from, Um, but it's I think he always sucked, but I think he definitely got worse. Like I always was kind of creeped out by the sense that there's a cult of personality around him. But even back when liberals liked him, uh, but
Well,
he
that's
did get more explicit about his like weird eugenic stuff. I don't know if it's how much of that is mask off versus like radicalization, but
he might have. And I mean, he might have radicalized himself. Like that is what some people say. He literally just stared at the internet so long that he.
yeah.
Um, what's terrifying about him is that he was compared to Nikolai Tesla and
Hmm.
Iron Man, and it still wasn't enough. It's a very Trumpy thing, the chip on the shoulder. Like it's not, nothing is enough. The
Yeah.
power, the praise, the call of personality, it's not enough. Those people scare me quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like kind of like neurotic. Like there's no amount of praise that will be enough for him. And but at least the flip side is I can enjoy the fact that insults really do bother him.
They
And
do.
Trump too. Like all of uh, um a lot of the sort of commentators will be like, well, don't be too mean. You're going to push people against you. It really does work to insult Trump. It does. Insulting Trump, insulting Musk, insulting all these like powerful people. It doesn't do like a lot, but it does signal to other people that, oh, this person is widely hated, so maybe I shouldn't be like them and shouldn't promote them. And
I mean, I was going to say that arguably insulting Trump is what made him run for president, but
yeah,
he was insulted not to be to thank Obama, not thank Obama. Obama ragged on him at a White House press correspondence dinner, and he was
ah,
famously really mad about it.
yeah,
But Obama did that because Trump had become a birther. So, like
yes,
in the parlance of the playground, he started it. You know.
yes, yeah.
Um,
That's why I also like drives me crazy when people act like no one called him a racist until he became president or whatever. But he was like full on doing like a white nationalist conspiracy theory on TV, and everyone saw that. So I think it was pretty common knowledge. Like I didn't know that he was a racist before that, but I knew from the birther thing, like, oh yeah, I've seen that conspiracy theory before, and I know what kind of people are into that conspiracy theory.
and what it represents, because why would you be so sure that
Yeah.
someone is also, I don't fucking care if he was secretly born in Kenya. That's not
Oh
my
yeah.
problem with him.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I don't even though it would open up the possibility of President Musk, I don't necessarily agree with the natural birth requirement anyway. Um,
No, I mean that's not, I'm not going to go to the bat go to bat for that
yeah.
in any way, but also please not President Musk. Wow, what a journey we've had. Um so we can someday go to our lives. This is Chris will be sad that this is so long because it's fun, but you know what? He's going to have to get over that.
Oh,
Um,
you're gonna do him next?
I would like to get him on here, but he is like a silent. We have silent non-Serviam Earth, and then there's me. Can we wrap up with a lightning round?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the first one is what's your favorite conspiracy theory? Not one you believe. What's the
Yeah, yeah. Um, ah, trying to think of what there's some that are really fun to me. Um, I do like Hollow Earth a lot. Um,
that one
it's
is,
just because it's just so
yeah.
bizarre. Like
Yeah.
what? Why would you even think that the Earth is hollow? Obviously, there's like magma down there, but
No, there are
uh,
dinosaurs in there, aren't there?
yeah, oh yeah, and there's all sorts of weird stuff that they think is in there. So it's like a whole universe of like crackpot beliefs and crackpot history. Like um, so many like humans are like kind of a messed up form of like some great beings that lived inside the Earth or whatever.
Definitely.
Um, but maybe not for many people actually believe that these days. Or like the
Well,
phantom time hypothesis one is interesting. Like,
ooh, I like that one. That
yeah,
one's good. I don't know why I like that. It
because
tickles my history loving brain
yeah, because
somehow.
it's like it's something that doesn't have like, at least as far as I could tell, doesn't have an obvious like anti-Semitic tinge to it, like so many conspiracy theories do, even ones that don't seem like they do.
Yep.
But it's just like it's not super consequential. If it turns out to be true, it's like, oh well, I'll be damned. It's a different year than I thought.
It's like it's a good like when you know 2000. Oh no, the rapture will happen. It's not 2000 everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Like it makes the world smaller in some way that I don't know. I can't. I like it though. I just like that one. Well, that is a good choice. But all fun conspiracy theories can be ruined by people who actually believe them.
Yeah, and then they might get violent about it and start like, burning down people's calendars or something in anger
Yeah.
or whatever.
I mean, the weirdest is flat Earth. I wrote a whole book about that. A lot of people started ironically being flat earthers even in the 19th century and then became them. It was like a very weird mixture of ironic and sincere, and then it was, and you would think that one was harmless, but I don't know.
Oh yeah.
If
And
you're
like in the universe of like bullshit that people believe about trans people, in some ways the transvestigator one is fun because the people who are deep into that just think everyone's trans.
they do, they really
And
do.
they think that like famous trans people are actually not trans.
That's what that's fun. That's like what was it? I think it was a trans man, a trans boy who did wrestling on the
Oh
boys
yeah.
team, and then it was reported by by right wing people a trans is wrestling
Yeah.
on the boys team, or it was like
Yeah,
it it was the
they
opposite
forced
of what they were flailing about.
yeah, like the Republican passed law forced him to be on the girls' team,
That's right. Yeah,
and then he won, and then they got mad at him and just thought he was a trans girl, even though
because
he's like obviously presenting as a boy, and yeah,
they can't even bother to retain anything.
it hurt itself in its confusion.
Oh gosh. Well, we can't talk about your thing about Murray Rothbard's black nationalism, but we should definitely link to it.
Oh
Should we
yeah.
throw out the entire Murray Rothbard?
Oh, okay. Here's a one fun thing we could talk about pertaining to Rothbard is a while back. I think it was like 2014, like really long time ago. My friend went to like a libertarian Students for Liberty thing, and she let people sponsor her trip by letting us like pay money to put like a message on her back. And I'm the one who paid to put, if you see the Rothbard on the road, kill him.
Was that Bobby?
Yeah, that was Bobby had that message on her back, and I'm the one who paid for that, and that totally became a meme. And it's a bizarrely consequential meme because it seemed like Christopher Cantwell's derangement spiral kind of started around
Whoa!
that time, and he wrote a whole article about that, about how it made him mad, and and he even understood the reference. I think he understood that it was like a Buddhist reference, but um, it still made him very mad. And I think David Friedman giggled. He got the reference, and then there was a talk among like these kind of more fashy, like Mises Caucus kind of libertarians, and Hans Hermann Hoppe was there, and he talked about it. He said he's talking about how horrible left libertarians are, and saying like, and they say if you see the Rothbard that you must make roadkill of him.
That's my favorite Hoppe quote that I've ever heard, certainly.
Yeah.
I saw that message. I don't even remember Bobby's last name, not that we should like bandy it about, but I have a shirt that she designed that I bought from her that says armed trans women.
I
And
had that
every
shirt
time,
too,
yes, I put
and
it on. I'm like, oh, it happened to Bobby. Cool.
yeah, I like value that shirt so much. I rarely wear it, so it's still in pretty good condition. Maybe I should wear it tomorrow.
Yeah, mine's in pretty good shape too. And I'm thinking I should really just bust that out more and
Yeah,
wash it every day. Yeah, that's you know what Students for Liberty conferences. However, like American libertarianism goes en masse, there's some momentous things. There are always a surprising number of trans people lurking. Like, yeah, actually, I just I discovered C4SS because they tabled there.
that's cool.
Um,
Yeah,
and they wanted to reach out to the people that I think, you know, um, the kind of anarchist I'd met before who thought I was like a far right lunatic with some maybe some good inklings. So the fact
Yeah.
that C4SS was there to kind of reach out was I always thought was cool. Like that was the
Yeah.
beginning, one of the beginnings of a long road, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
There's always those people on the left who just think that C4SS people are ANCAPs, basically. Or,
yeah, yeah,
um, yeah, I think a lot of trans people get into libertarianism because, like I mentioned before, we know firsthand that like you can't trust authority, and even people who think that they have your interest in heart, they don't understand, and they just you can't really trust other people to do things for you. You just got to kind of manufacture your own estrogen or testosterone or
though I wish you didn't have to. God knows, I
yeah.
wish you didn't. Because not everyone wants to take. I don't know, wants to take the
Yeah, not
time.
everyone should have to be a chemist. That
Exactly.
just seems to not be messed up like that.
And another person I met there, Kelly Wright, has a fabulous. I always wanted to get her on here. It's a fabulous thing from Liberal Currents a couple years ago that just directly talks about trans rights and abortion rights, and like
Oh
this is
yeah,
the same right. Like this,
yeah,
these are not in conflict. They must go together, and it's really good. And I feel
yeah,
like
and
I need
I
to say
think
that endlessly. I
yeah,
think.
and they're definitely linked. And I don't think it's like anti-trans to say that abortion is a women's issue because obviously most people with uteruses are women or
Sure.
girls, and so it is done even if it like tangentially affects like AFAB non-binary people and trans men. Its intent is to affect women, and I think psychologically it affects all women, even those who can't get pregnant. Um, so yeah, and then like gatekeeping for trans people, I think that's also like uh, more targeted towards trans women. Although lately it seems to be targeted towards trans men, but even there, the mentality is that you're protecting girls from gender ideologies, the way they phrase it.
Yep. It's so horrible, and it's
Like I subjected myself to that book, Irreversible Damage, and it's
ooh,
pretty dumb. It's like amazing how poorly written it is. I almost don't believe all the people who claim that they read it and liked it. Like I don't think a lot of them actually read it.
I watched a psychologist on YouTube like break it down, and I also
Oh
um
yeah, I think I
uh
know who you're talking about. I
yeah,
think I saw that
purple
too.
hair, good
Yeah,
eyebrows. Yeah,
I don't remember her name.
I don't either.
Cassie or something like
Yeah,
that.
that sounds right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because I like to check my assumptions, I watched the Reason interview with Abigail Schreier,
Oh yeah,
um, and Nick Gillespie used to be a good interviewer.
yeah,
But unfortunately, she was personable enough and wasn't obviously dogmatic enough that I
yeah,
actually saw why ignorant but not maybe hostile people could maybe be fooled by her. She is a
yeah,
conservative. She writes in conservative publications,
yeah.
but she's pretending to be a concerned, vaguely mom like journalist type, basically. And
Yeah, and I think like if you read the book, she at least towards the beginning does a good job of seeming like someone who's just like kind of was on the fence and now she's a journalist. Her mask slips off the further into the book you get, but
yeah, that's
she at least keeps that shtick up for a while. She even like looped uh, Michael Shermer in, and that was very disappointing for me. I mean, I already didn't like him anyway, but I used to like him a long time ago. He kind of got me into skepticism with his book, how why people believe weird things, and now he's a people who believes weird things. He buys into her narrative, and even though he like didn't fall for, he knows that like intelligent design is just rebranded creationism. He doesn't seem to get that uh watchful waiting is just rebranded conversion therapy.
yeah. Shermer allegedly kind of a creep, but
Yes,
even
that's
even
why I
for
didn't like him before. I kind of changed my mind about him just because of that, and that was before um the Schreier stuff.
additionally, I was kind of heartbroken by Shermer, even just professionally, because he co-wrote a book about Holocaust denial
Hmm.
that is really good, and it looks at Holocaust denial and also kind of how we know that anything happened, and kind of the
Yeah.
weird fallacies, like people who think, well, these points of views are different, so someone's lying. This number of deaths fluctuates, so some, and it's like, no, the
Yeah.
opposite. If everyone was repeating, in lockstep, that would be a lot stranger. And Shermer recently did the Sam Harris-esque saying Hamas is worse than the Nazis because the Nazis didn't kill their own people.
Oh my God.
What the fuck are you talking about, dude?
Wow. Yeah,
That's
like
cool.
the way he
That's
talked
cool
about,
when you do that.
yeah.
They're not my people. They're fucking disabled and what have you. I
Oh
mean, what
yeah,
an
yeah.
idiot.
And yeah.
God damn.
Um yeah, it's a real shame because like in like why people believe weird things, he even mentions that like Holocaust deniers got like one thing right and then kind of ran with that. Like they correctly found they were correct in noting that like the rumor about like lampshades being made from human
Right,
skin
right.
wasn't true, and that kind of taught me early on that like yeah, a conspiracy nuts can always find a crack in the official narrative. That doesn't mean that the official narrative is wrong overall. It just got that one thing wrong.
That should
Um,
be engraved on a wall in huge letters because that
yeah,
is so important and got so lost during COVID, even
and
more so.
and it's also like it also means that the like importantly the lampshade the human skin lampshade thing was wrong. Like the evil people were right about that one thing, and it's okay to um try to get it right even if it means that the evil people were right about that one thing or whatever.
Allegedly, that might have happened once, kind of.
Yeah, it might have. It was. I think the thing that was a myth was the idea that it was like systematic or whatever.
Definitely not real.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes I also think that some of the less self-aware Holocaust deniers think that we're all saying that 6 million Jews were all put in gas chambers, like
Yeah.
all put in gas chambers and all like within the bounds of Germany. Like they
Yeah.
ignore and like, no, that's not what we're saying at all.
Yeah.
There's some there. The reason I should leave Substack entirely is because one of the most popular things on there is the Holocaust denier guide that Tucker Carlson had on and was like a thing briefly.
Oh, which guy was that?
Um, I'm blanking on his terrible name. Basically, he's team like, well, the Holocaust wasn't on purpose; it's just war, and
Yeah.
they had all those POWs in the East, and nothing was
Yeah.
on. There's like a whole fucking Jordan Peterson does this,
Yeah.
just a denial that there was an ideology and an impractical desire to kill people. Yes, they
Yeah.
enslaved people. They also killed people. They could have had more slaves and not killed as many as quickly, or
Yeah.
it was not practical world domination. It was like, if I can't kill all my enemies, I don't want to dominate the world. They're so stupid.
I think a lot of people like kind of refuse to believe that like evil people are like a real thing. And
Yeah,
so they don't believe you when you say like, oh, this the far right actually wants to kill certain groups of people. Um, they just think that, oh, humans aren't like that. They don't want to kill certain groups of people. They just think they're just true believers in like their religious beliefs, and they think that they want to convert people or like no. Some people out there actually do have murderous intent, and
they
there's
do.
like a movement of them, and that's what the Nazis were, and that's what
And
many genociders throughout history have been. They've been uh, the genocide was pretty deliberate.
but like, just because there's also a variation in say commitment. Jordan Peterson's whole like, there's so many men, it's always men, who think they know about Nazi Germany and talk about it all the time and are
Yeah,
completely wrong. It's
yeah,
weird. Like, you would have been like a concentration camp guard and you would have liked it. I was like, you're an
right.
idiot. You if you want to make it, you would have put your head down in Nazi Germany and not made waves as a like if that's your
Yeah.
generalization, not like you would have like not all the Nazis were sadistic. Like it is a combination of the sadistic, the dying to murder, the apathetic, the need a job. Like I don't know, they're shut down. Wow, we failed at the lightning round.
Oh, yeah, that wasn't very lightning. I'm sorry. I kind of rambled too much.
No, you're fun to talk to, which is your that's darn you. All right. Well, okay. This is not okay. No, rights or liberation.
Rights or liberation? Um, I don't. I think I'm not clever enough to fully understand a lot of the terminology. I always just think in terms of liberation is um, like not. I don't usually think in terms of like United Nations like human rights sort of framework. I just think like people should be free to self-serve their rights.
I'll take it. Philosophically problematic fave.
Oh, philosophically. I mean, maybe this is probably everyone's answer, but like maybe Nietzsche or uh, I'm sure there's a worse person I like. I mean, there's a lot of people who I love watching them talk, but they're like total assholes, like
Mhm.
Christopher Hitchens.
Oh
Um,
yeah, he had his moments. My goodness.
like, yeah, he kind of was like practically a neocon later in his life, although he never was bad on Israel and Gaza.
I know it's so weird. It's the
Yeah,
like he was so war on terror, and he never went full. Let's kill the Palestinians.
yeah,
And I don't think he would be a Trump fan because
yeah.
you well, Nietzsche and Christopher Hitchens. Personally,
I'm like an 18-year-old boy apparently.
personally problematic fave.
Oh, personal problematic fave, like a celebrity or someone, or
I guess anybody that like who has like great work that like was particularly I don't know like
oh,
wasn't Pablo Neruda a Nazi or something?
there's a
Possibly.
lot of ones I could answer for that, like terrible people whose art I like.
Yeah.
Um, uh, oh, let's see, what's a good one? Okay, it's just not lighting. I need to do it fast. Um, maybe JPEG Mafia. Like I like his music, but he's like he's like friends with Kanye West, and he's
Okay.
like I don't know. He's probably kind of sketchy, and he's a little bit of an edge lord. There's a lot of musicians I like who are kind of edge lordy, but uh, he's like made some kind of edgy music where he like does like f slur and stuff like that. Yeah,
Um, what is the and you might even have a different answer, but uh, PC, Mac, or like Linux or something?
FreeBSD.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
FreeBSD. It's another Unix, but practically
Okay.
speaking, it's a lot like Linux because you can run all the same software. Just compile it for FreeBSD.
Um, what is best browser for I'm
I
secretly
personally use Firefox. I
okay.
had to use Chrome for this because like the API, I think the audio API that it required doesn't work in Firefox for some reason. So
Yeah, there's
sometimes I have to use Chrome or something like that. But
that was secretly for me a little bit because I was favorite vacation spot.
I like going to kind of local places a lot. I mean, I do international travel. My wife's Japanese. We go to Japan like once a year.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
but I love. I think one of my favorite places in the whole world is Big Sur in California.
Mm.
It's like it's like you don't expect it to be there. It's along the ocean, so you expect it to be that like typical like kind of chaparral kind of area, but it's like full on like temperate rainforest, like you're in the Pacific Northwest kind of a thing.
Mm.
There's like their own like redwoods and cedars, stuff like that.
I've never been there. I love Pacific Northwest is really nice though.
Yeah.
Redwoods, that's all good stuff. Best concert you ever went to?
I'm gonna actually say a concert I went to kind of recently. There's a
That's
local
good.
musician I like called Lav Andula, like Latin for lavender, and uh, her live set was awesome. And it's the the drummer was like a drummer who drums in a lot of local bands, and he's like a really good drummer. Um, her music is usually like when it's recorded, it's more like witch house kind of stuff, but in live, it kind of has like a noise sort of vibe to it. And when I saw there's like other cool like local acts and stuff, I really like stuff like that. I also maybe really like the Current 93 concert I went to because it's like a 2 day thing. That was
Mm.
pretty cool. Um,
Well, um, fantasy or sci-fi?
I'm kind of more of a fantasy person, and that's actually one thing that I was almost going to mention when we were talking about transhumanism, but then
Mm,
I spazzed out because I'm ADHD and forgot I was going to make the point. But one thing I always didn't like about the aesthetics of transhumanism is it just pictures like this sci-fi future that I'm not interested in,
mm.
and I don't want to be a robot. I want to be like a fairy, like sitting on a flower, something like that.
I think both those have their charms. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
they do. I mean, I like how clean some sci-fi looks. Like you're in like a city and everything's all polished and stuff. And
I mean, um, uh, Star Trek or Star Wars,
ah, I think I
or
would have
or
said,
a third secret thing.
yeah. Oh, I would have said Star Trek when I was younger, but I think Star Wars has kind of grown on me. Maybe more because I like the extended universe stuff a lot.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Um, and first cybernetic transhumanist upgrade, whatever you want to call it, that you would
I
like.
I want to be able to swim underwater. That's I want to like be like swim around in rivers and like not have to and be able to stay underwater for like long periods of time and not like a dolphin have like a dolphin's ability to hold my breath and stuff like that.
So for like an hour, I'm guessing loudly,
Yeah.
but like something. Yeah, that's cool. That sounds very pleasant. My last one was literally supposed to be Blue Sky or Mastodon, but God knows we covered that
Yeah.
quite a bit. I don't know if I have any other old timey internet ones. We hit GeoCities. I'm not sure. Um, all right, and the all important. How would I get a cappuccino in your imagined political utopia?
Well, I like people having multiple options. So like if one like is doesn't work for whatever reason, there's like other fallbacks. So I like the idea of like there's not like all these like protectionist laws that are meant to you know privilege firms at the expense of everyone else. So people are just like kind of running cafes out of their own house. So you go into a city block and there's a bunch of coffee nerds who can offer you a cappuccino. You knock on the door and you just give them a little bit of money because there's good price competition. And then if you can't afford that, well, maybe some of them have like pay like a ability to pay sliding scale thing, or the local like anarchist collective has like a big thing of like coffee and hot cider, and you can go there and they can kind of make like a cappuccino or some sort of faux cappuccino that's like coffee plus foamed oat milk or whatever. Um, and maybe we're using high technology, so we're like actually like growing the coffee in like a grass or something and not having to destroy rainforests for our coffee
That'd be
anymore.
cool. I like that. Yeah. Or a cool dome of coffee growing. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with coffee. I like have an issue. I like live for cold brew coffee.
I always hope that when there's happy looking farmers on the label, it's better than not, but I don't really know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so let's have the future growing out of the grass coffee.
Yeah.
Um, do you have three recommendations that if anyone wants to get more of a sense of you or what you've something you've mentioned that people should check out?
like entertainment and stuff like that.
Yeah, like a book, a movie, a show, a song. We're very flexible here.
Uh, I think one that I swear I'm not just recommending this because she's my friend, but Micaiah Johnson wrote The Space Between Worlds, and it's really cool sci-fi. Like I know I said I'm more of a fantasy person earlier, but it's uh, it's sci-fi. It's like really gritty. There's like there's different universes, different like kind of alternate timelines that the main character goes to, and it gets into like a lot of philosophy of like alternate versions of yourself, and there's a lot of like political commentary about like class and stuff like that. And some aspects of it are kind of relatable to me. Like both of us kind of came from the high desert in California, and uh, it's very apparent that that kind of informed a lot of how she describes the poor rural side of things in this story. And you know the roving bands in her story I could very much picture in like a apocalyptic version of the high desert. Um,
That's
it's
intriguing.
it's
Okay.
a very queer story too, of course,
Mm.
because she wrote it, and um, it got a lot of accolades. Actually, it's not super mainstream, but I think uh, it's gotten pretty good reviews from people who read it. So it's not just
Okay.
me saying that it's good.
That's legit.
Um, and then I always feel weird about recommending things recent because there's always a possibility that I'll feel different about it like a decade later and think that it's totally corny. But I
That's
think the movie
that's
I
legal.
saw, yeah, I think the movie I saw, The TV Glow, is pretty good. Um,
That's a great title, but I don't actually know what that
yeah,
is.
it's like I feel like that movie is almost like made for me.
Mm.
It's like it is like a kind of a trans allegory, and I didn't know that before I watched it. I was just like
Mm.
on the on the plane, and it was like one of the options, and I heard people talk about it, very vaguely remembered, and then I just watched it, and it became very apparent that it was kind of a Matrix style trans allegory, but not a sci-fi universe, more like a kind of a magical realism sort of universe, and
Okay.
like it kind of takes place in our world, except it's like surreal, and there's like you don't know if the world that you're going to is real or not. There's a lot of references to stuff from the 90s, like Pete and Pete and
Oh, nice.
Smashing Pumpkins. And I loved Pete and Pete. So, like, that's part of
Great
what makes,
show. Great show.
yeah, that's part of what makes me feel like it was like made specifically for me. But everyone liked it. Everyone our generation loved it, you know.
I saw
Um,
it mentioned, but I didn't investigate. So that's
yeah, it's definitely worth watching. And I think it, for someone who's not trans, they might kind of get a sense for what it feels like from watching it, like how the kind of surreal aspects of it, and how the main character can't even tell what's real or not. And there's just certain lines in the movie that are just like very devastating to hear. Like, oh, like there's the part where it says there's still time, and um, yeah, the symbolism's pretty good. And
okay.
then since I'm obsessed with music and music has taken over my life, I would be remiss if I didn't mention like an album that I like. So, uh, love Secret Domain by Coil. Coil's like my favorite band of all time, and
I don't even know that name.
yeah, they're like if you've ever heard of, okay, you know Trent Reznor's side project, How to Destroy Angels.
I know of it,
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, anyway, it's named after Coil's first album. So Trent Reznor is a fan of Coil.
Okay.
He was, you know, he was very influenced by like the old school industrial like Throbbing Gristle, and he kind of made it more accessible, I guess. Um,
These
but
are
yeah,
names
like
I've heard, but I don't have a good sense of how that might sound, I suppose.
yeah, like it's like Coil's kind of more dark ambient and
Mm.
a lot of their stuff, like really creepy sounding. But Love Secret Domain is one of their more accessible kind of poppy albums that came out like in the late '80s. It's not actually my favorite album of theirs, but I recommend it because it's like it kind of captures a more like camp, fun sort of side of Coil.
Okay.
Um,
I like that.
it's like kind of danceable. There's one track in it. where Mark Allman sings um, of Soft Cell.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always a little bit with you, but
Yeah.
camp and dark ambient and some of the other things, that's an intriguing collection of
Yeah.
descriptions, at least. Oh my goodness. Okay, I should let you go. I should wrap this darn thing up. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
One again, and like it feels like a long, many years in the making meeting, even if it was in the internet. Where can the listeners find you on the internet?
Maybe one of the best places is just my blog, thomaswebb.net, because I post. I think when I post things on other places, I'm going to start sharing a link to it there too. And also, I have some links on the blog to my other stuff. They could also follow me. I'm on Mastodon, like at thomasjwebb at mastodon.social, but and then on Bluesky, I have a relay there that's at thomaswebb.net.
All right, very good. As usual, don't follow me on Twitter, though Non-Serviam still has a lean presence there. But follow Non-Serviam everywhere, especially on Bluesky and Mastodon, and Instagram. And you can follow me if you want to on mostly Bluesky these days, but I keep wanting to get back into Mastodon because it deserves it. And all right, no more fun talks. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on, and maybe you can come on again and talk about child liberation or more transhumanism or all sorts of other things.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
You're listening to the Non-Serviam Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe over on our YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast platform. You can also follow us across social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Mastodon. If you're extra interested in seeing this project continue, consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com. But if you can't contribute financially, we still like you a whole lot. And you can help us out just by liking and sharing this episode or any other one that catches your fancy. As always, shout out to our existing patrons. Your support helps us reach a larger audience and helps keep this project alive. Thanks so much.